Going. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and we are watching another Wit and Folly video. This time about, the most talked about topic LiteratureDevil and myself have been discussing over the years. It's titled A Too Perfect Female Character, and guess what? It's about Star Wars.
Yes, and about last time we were told to, we've been told over and over again to educate ourselves. So what better way to educate ourselves than with an educational video like this one?
I think that's a good way of putting it because we don't understand many things. I agree. I do not understand many things, especially the things from other people who tell me I need to read books more. And then I ask them which books. They don't tell me which books. And then I'm like, okay, can you give me more details then where I should be going to? And yeah, so we're deciding to watch another video. And this is a topic we are very well versed in. So, and if we don't, please in the comments tell us where we're wrong. We're always open to suggestion and links. We love reading links. We love reading books from links. We will happily pick up a book that you recommend that we should be checking out. Not necessarily about feminist literature, but I think any book that teaches us the lesson we need to learn and or the phrase that this idea comes from, so we can wrap our heads around it and then properly argue for or against. So we're not here to just bash on someone, but unfortunately the way they talk and the conclusions they either come to, whether they've come to that through essay format or just they decide to work backwards after they say, hey, you know what, Ray isn't a Mary Sue, I'm going to work backwards and explain why. That's the sort of thing we pick up on very quickly. So in case you don't know what a Mary Sue is, it's a very nebulous term about a character who is overpowered and whose power level is unexplained. Now, there's other various elements to that. There's other various tropes and archetypes to that. All you have to do is go to TV tropes. Here's a list. I'm going to just post it just for the sake of posting it. Here's a list of various archetypes on TV tropes of Mary Sue. So you have like the jerk Sue, the fixer Sue. I like the...
Oh, it's a whole list of them.
I like the married Sue. That's my favorite.
Yeah, the married Sue. That's a great one.
That's a great pun there. I love that.
So Sherlock, the modern day Sherlock Holmes kind of falls into that sometimes. It's when he gets ridiculous with his planning, especially in the later seasons of Sherlock.
Yeah, if you're talking about the BBC Sherlock, the later season they sort of just run out of ideas and just play with the format.
Yeah, basically it's when a character becomes pretty much omnipotent, and like I pretty much we take the Xantos Gambit to the extreme, or Batman Gambit to extreme,
right.
And they know everything about everyone. That's what Mary Sue is.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of interpretations, and it started from that one start with Trekkie's Tale, and it's just morphed into other things. But it doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what label you give it, or sub-label or subtitle. It all comes under the blanket of bad writing. So if you see a character who has all these unexplained qualities, who are instantly liked, and has all these other variables that say, hey, you know what, this doesn't quite make sense. It feels as if the writer is just pushing this character along, as if the writer wants stuff to happen. It's all coincidence. It's all luck. It's all this or that. You might have a Mary Sue on your hands. So take your time. This is a 13.5-minute video. We'll be here for a good portion of your evening, so thanks for standing by. And let's get going. So it's Ray versus the Mary Sue. It's not Ray as Mary Sue.
Okay, so Ray versus the Mary Sue. Okay, this is the premise, I believe, then. Ray versus Mary Sue.
Yeah, so she's going to, I guess, argue the point.
Compare and contrast, I believe.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's what it seems like.
That's good. Oh, it's green. I don't know. I don't think that's the right color, but again, she's got some filters going. She knows her video stuff. Good looking video.
Shortly after The Force Awakens came out in mid-December 2015, the internet community saw a lot, and I mean a lot, of Rey is a Mary Sue content. Google searches for Rey is Mary Sue, as well as what is Mary Sue, reached peak trend in late December. Arguments ensued on Reddit and Tumblr, comment threads on articles and YouTube videos turned into gladiatorial battles.
Whoa, what the hell? Gladiatorial battles? It's just... I think this literary aspect of a character is X. No, you're wrong. I will come after you with a broadsword. Okay. It's just an obvious observation of character traits that are unexplained, that have a certain trend that we've seen before, as most patterns in literature are. You see the detective archetype, you see the magician archetype, etc., etc. You can roll it back to Jung, you could go to Campbell, you could do all sorts of things. So the mythos is just a pattern we see.
Men and women, fans and haters were on each side of the fight, but a lot of them on both sides were wrong.
So everyone's wrong. Doesn't matter who you are, everyone's wrong, whether you believe or disagree. And I do believe that Wit and Folly is going to set the record straight. So we've been wrong all this time, guys, just so you know.
And since The Last Jedi came out in theaters, the trends upticked again. We're seeing this argument play out all over the internet. But a lot of people are using the term differently than the person they're engaging with, and some of these discussions culminate in participants having to define what it is they actually mean when they say Mary Sue.
This is true. You have to define your terms before you actually communicate about them. And a problem with the Mary Sue trope is it's a blanket term. There's a big bucket of all sort of minor tropes and other things inside of them, as LiteratureDevil and myself have talked about before. So yeah, you should get a definition going, and you just have to back it up with evidence. So why is this pattern or these 5 criteria working or not? Quite simple.
A lot of people use it and take it as an insult, and most of the time it is, according to most people's definition of the term.
Well, it's when you say bad writing, it's kind of like saying, can a deus ex machina, that pattern, ever make sense? And yes, it could, even though universally it's a bad idea. You could have a whole story or a whole setting filled with gods that come out of nowhere or beings with some supreme power that just snap their fingers and fix things. And if that's commonplace, then that's the setting. So it wouldn't be alien for that to happen, right? But you can't just do that. You can't just have that in normal stories, even if you have a supernatural component. Because then that supernatural component becomes so unbelievable because it can do anything. So you have to be careful with yourself there. And I do believe I lost LiteratureDevil again. The joys of technology. What are we going to do?
So what does it really mean when you use this archetype to describe a character? Well, it's complicated because you have to first think about Mary Sue in context. So let's get to it.
You got a lot to learn.
If you think Rey is a Mary Sue, you may be using an incorrect definition.
Okay, so here we have the author believing that because someone believes Rey is a Mary Sue, we might be having the wrong definition, which also implies that we might be having the right definition and we could be correct. So it could happen. But let's see what her definition is so we can compare notes.
And no, I'm not talking about the Wikipedia, Urban Dictionary entries on the subject.
Okay, so if it's not Wikipedia, if it's not Urban Dictionary, if it's not TV tropes, where do we go for our reference? I mean, we can look at the original, sure, we can look at the Trekkie's Tale, but that's just the instance of a thing. That's like saying Edgar Allan Poe, who invented the detective genre with Auguste Dupin, everything is based off that. Well, then we have other instances of even greater, more popular detectives or armchair detectives and retired soldier detectives. We have Nero Wolfe, we have Sherlock, we have there's all sorts from British to American detective fiction. So you can't just say, oh, this is the armchair detective and this is the classical example. It's like, well, there's other instances of it with other flavors. The same way there have been other flavors of Mary Sue. So you just have to be aware that There's more than one definition, and trying to get the most generic one is probably how you want to do it. You don't want to just have, well, she's overpowered, therefore Mary Sue. That won't work. This is a author on board moment. Well, that's an author on board trope. That's not necessarily Mary Sue. Well, it's definitely a part of it. So you have to have a good example with good argument to define your terms. You can't just like make stuff up either. And that's why you go to TV tropes, because it has all the patterns. You have to look at them. People have written them down. So if you disregard that, you're not talking from a place of knowledge. You're talking from a place of ignorance, which you don't do.
I'm talking about the original Mary Sue, and the intent...
Okay, so she's using the original. That's fine. That's okay. We were expecting something like that. I'm not against it, but it's an older term, and it's not completely accurate. Like, I don't know about the sacrificial element, but we're going to see what that exactly entails in her definition.
Behind the creator of the Mary Sue archetype. A Mary Sue is not a female character that never fails. A Mary Sue is also not a purely derogatory archetype.
Okay, then what is it? Why would we even bother using the term then? If it's not derogatory, what does the pattern mean? Now, usually a trope is neutral. Usually a trope is neither good nor bad. But again, some tropes are bad, like Deus Ex. There has to be a good example of why a Mary Sue could ever be a good aspect of writing. If anyone knows a good writing technique for Mary Sue and knows the story, please write it down in the chat. That would be the best example. I'm sure people have read a lot of books, watched a lot of movies, seen a lot of shows. Just write it down in the comments. I don't know where Devil ran off to. I think he either lost his internet or he's having problems. He said he solved his problems from yesterday, but I don't want to wait on him. So Devil probably had a heart attack. No, he's I don't know where he is, but he just lost internet connection. He hasn't messaged me back. So I'm assuming he's up and away. He does have internet. He's messaging me on other media. But the same problem occurred. So don't worry. He's going to be back. His computer froze. He's rebooting. But I'm going to save you guys some time and not have to kill the stream again because, this is going to take all night anyway.
Although most people do seem to use it this way. Let's take a quick review of what Rey's character is intended to be.
What does Rey's character intend to be? See, here's a problem we already have with the definition of Mary Sue, or really anything. It does not matter what the author intends. It matters what the author does. It matters what's on the page, what's on the screen, etc. I do not care what J.J. Abrams or George Lucas or any other creator or scriptwriter of anything intends. I care what's on the screen. I care what's on the page. If you start speculating and going to interviews and say, well, what were you thinking when you were doing this? You're interpreting someone's thoughts as opposed to interpreting someone's actions and work. So that's already a flaw in your judgment, okay? I don't know why you'd care to know the intention of the writer. No, I intended to do this. Well, did you do it? No. Well, what did you do? That's what I care about. I care about the final product, and so should you.
In the Star Wars saga, our main characters will go on a classic Joseph Campbell hero's journey. This journey can be organized into 3 parts, which are within each film, within each trilogy, and within the entire saga. Rey's hero's journey is quite similar to Luke's within their introductory films alone. They both live in the ordinary world. They receive a call to adventure. They both initially refuse the call. They meet mentors who are both killed by the end of the film. They are tested. They journey into a dark place. They overcome the bad guys and receive a reward. They accept their newfound abilities and are thus symbolically resurrected. And while Luke does not return with the elixir, Rey does. So Rey fits the archetype for a typical hero within Campbell's framework.
Yes, and this was not actually inherently a bad thing. The problem is it was derivative, meaning that Episode 7 was pretty much a carbon copy of A New Hope. So it's like, oh yeah, she is Luke. Yeah, pretty much. because that was that was his safe way of making a movie from Star Wars. Just copy what someone else did. And it got a lot of criticism for that, but you can't say it's bad because it was such a copy.
How about the Mary Sue archetype? Mary Sue was a character who appeared in a short fan fiction within a 1973 Star Trek fanzine. Fanzines were basically like Tumblr in print and included fan fiction stories, art, news, columns written by the creators, and fan letters. The story, A Trekkie's Tale, was very short. It was meant to be a parody of a repeated archetype Paula Smith was noticing in other Star Trek fan fiction. Mary Sue boards the Enterprise. All male leads fall in love with Mary Sue. Mary Sue saves the day with her hairpin. She reveals to Spock that she is half Vulcan. All of the male leads get sick, but Mary Sue pilots the Enterprise while they are sick. She wins a bunch of awards. Mary Sue then gets sick herself and dies. Everyone mourns Mary Sue because she was just too perfect for this world. According to Joan Marie Verba's 1996 publication, Boldly Writing, the rules for a Mary Sue are as follows.
Okay, so here we have Verba. I'm not familiar exactly with this thing exactly. So Verba is creating another definition of what a Mary Sue is. Again, very old, right after apparently the definition of, or the instance of a Mary Sue from the Trekkie's Tale. So this I'm not familiar with. Maybe we'll get some good definitions coming. That's good.
Number 1, a young or youngest officer in Starfleet.
Okay, so this is specific to the genre or the franchise. Okay, so let's just write this down in case I forget. So we have, oh boy, 1, young or youngest in Starfleet. Interesting. Okay, so a young character, possibly adolescent.
Fun fact, at some point in the discussions with George Lucas, 2 of the main characters were teenagers, but when writing on Episode 7 began, Lucasfilm decided instead to make Rey the same age as Luke and Leia in the original film, which is 19. I don't think Rey fits this stereotype. She is young, yes, but she's not unusually young for a Star Wars story. There's a blurb in the Last Jedi Visual Dictionary that notes that the Empire uses so-called sub-adults for many jobs at their bases, mainly for the kids that weren't strong or able enough to become stormtroopers. So if anything, the choice to age her up and not have her be, let's say, 16, goes in the opposite direction of a Mary Sue archetype.
Okay, if you're arguing about 18, 19, technically they're still in her teens. This is a very odd definition. Again, I've never heard this one. But just because Verba's using it, apparently this is the one that Miss Folly is going to be using. So, okay, we'll go with that. See what she has to say about it.
Number 2, adored by everyone on the ship, especially Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Okay, so that's also very similar to the basic definition, liked by all, or instantly liked by people she comes across. That's pretty much true as far as I can tell.
So she must be adored by all of our main male leads.
No, in general, not male, just in general. BB-8 likes her, Finn likes her, Poe likes her. Pretty much everyone does. Even the antagonists like her, or want her.
This actually does sort of happen with Rey, but you can't really scream Mary Sue for this one alone.
That's true, we can't, but it's true. The statement is true.
Finn's "you got a cute boyfriend" comment seems to just be for laughs.
Yes.
Got a boyfriend? Cute boyfriend?
None of your business, that's why.
And her unresponsiveness emphasizes that.
It has nothing to do with her response. It's that she is liked by everyone. By the definition Verba actually used. So I don't know why she's talking about Rey's response. Rey doesn't like Finn at the start. He goes and attacks him. So it doesn't really matter what Rey responds with if the definition is everyone likes her. So it's as if she's not listening to her own definition or Verba's own definition. Okay, fine. Little mistake there.
By now, it seems clear that Rey and Finn are simply friends. Also, Han doesn't initially like Rey when he meets her. And of course I mean platonically. She has to prove herself to him in order to gain his respect and mentorship.
I believe Mr. LiteratureDevil is back. Hello, sir.
Here we go.
Oh,
Back.
welcome to have you. We just missed the... apparently there is a person called Verba, I don't know the exact name, who defined what a Mary Sue is. We're going through the 4 or 5, I don't know how many there are, probable definitions of Mary Sue-ness from the Trekkie's Tale.
4 or 5 definitions from the Trekkie's tale.
Yeah,
That's
the criteria.
interesting.
Yeah, no. Let's go back to the second one because she actually got it wrong. Like she was trying to discourage it. And I was like, listen, you gave us the definition. Now you're saying, well, Ray didn't act this way. It's like it doesn't matter what Ray acted. if it's based off what other people think of her, that's it, and she's got it. So let's go back a bit.
That weren't strong or able enough to become stormtroopers.
Oh yeah, the first one was how young she is, and it's
How
like
young
okay, yeah.
So she
not-
says like because she's not 15 or 16 or whatever absurdly young age that Mary Sues tend to be, she's not a Mary Sue.
it was part of that. Oh, she's not quite a girl. It's like, well, she's still in her teens, right? 19.
You don't have to be a little girl. You can be an old man and still be a Mary Sue.
Right. It doesn't matter. There's so many. As again, the list of archetypes of Mary Sue is huge.
Is this all from Paula Smith's A Trekkie's Tale?
Well, it's as on the screen. I don't know if you can see it, but Joan Marie Verba apparently did a publication after that and said, "Hey, these are the definitions of a Mary Sue." And
That's
yeah, it's the same
okay,
thing almost.
insane. That's insane because Paula Smith wasn't coming out and saying, she wasn't writing a manifesto on the Mary Sue.
No, she wasn't.
Saw a bunch of patterns going on and says, "Hey, I want to write a funny story making fun of these patterns," and that's all she did. She wasn't coming out and saying like this is the final and utmost definition of what these characters are. And I might have coined the term Mary Sue.
Right.
It gave birth to the archetype, but
Exactly.
it wasn't a manifesto of any kind.
It's the same with any other archetype. If you look, as I mentioned before in the stream, if you talk about the detective archetype, like again, we know the father or the grandfather of detective fiction was Edgar Allan Poe. But even Sherlock references that, says, yeah, Auguste Dupin, he was way better than I was in his analytical ability. And then we have Nero Wolfe. Archie Goodwin references Sherlock all the time because it's American fiction inspired by the Brits. And then we have Poirot, who references Sherlock as well. So there's all these famous stories of these defined archetypes, different flavors of the detective, and it changes, it adapts, it gets added to the lore of what it means to be a detective. But the same elements are still there. And you can see the patterns very clearly. They're aloof. They're super genius. They think logically. They usually work alone. They have a little helper to walk around with to bounce ideas. Like it's very basic stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean it's not the overt things that happen in the Trekkie's Tale that make her a Mary Sue. It's not being young and a lieutenant, because she could be a young lieutenant and not be a Mary Sue. It's how she's treated by the plot in that scenario. Because Lieutenant Mary Sue comes in and suddenly she's hit on by Captain Kirk immediately, like without any prompting. He just comes up to her and hits on her, and then he goes, "No, I'm not that kind of woman." And he goes, oh, "Okay, well, I'll go get something to drink. Can you command the ship while I'm gone?" And that's put that in a logical scenario, that would never ever happen, because she's too young. She has no experience. Even if she were a genius Lieutenant Mary Sue, that wouldn't work because she didn't have the experience. She doesn't have the experience or the know-how or the wisdom or the training to take over the ship, even on a temporary fashion.
And the whole idea behind the Mary Sue is it was a parody. It was a joke of the stuff.
Yeah, it was a parody.
Yeah, the stuff that she was reading from fans. So whereas we have an archetype of actual good writing, like detective fiction, this is a joke on people writing fan fiction. And they're amateur. They're not good at it. So obviously you're going to get a lot of crazy, silly ideas, all referred to as bad writing. And when we say Mary Sue, we're not just saying, oh, it has to be this, it has to be that. Those are certain elements. The same way we could put anyone on the Mary Sue index or a scale and measure it and say, okay, is Luke a Mary Sue? Well, he's got this, he's got that, he doesn't have this. Then we say, hey, is he poorly written? Well, not really, but in some cases he could have been, it could have been fleshed out a bit more or clarified here or there. So that's what we do. We look at a criteria and say, does it fit properly, and explain. And that's why it works. That's why the Mary Sue title works with Ray, because she fits it all. Not the crazy ones like, oh, she's creating universes in her spare time and
Yeah, that's why there's so many of them. That's why there's so many different definitions of Mary Sue, because there's different kinds. There's not one end-all, be-all definition of Mary Sue. That'd be ridiculous. are working in a creative sphere.
Yeah, it's like saying this shit is the shittiest, smelliest shit you've ever seen. It's like, no. You see that dinosaur? He just dumped this massive load. That is got to be the worst fecal matter. Like how bad is bad, right? You can go into all the definitions that make writing good and then do the opposite of that. And then you have certain quantities. So
And there's a villain Sue, which I think a good example of that would be Hela from the Marvel movie. I think it was Ragnarok.
Right.
I believe it was Ragnarok.
Right.
And she was a villain Sue because she just walked in. She was so powerful that even her godly father feared her, and she just walked into Asgard and killed everybody with no problem.
Everyone.
No sweat. Even the heroes, Thor and his gang of merry men, or whatever you want to call them, and with the Hulk and everything, they didn't even defeat her. They had to like use a prophecy to defeat her, and some other thing kind of destroyed everything around her. And I'm not even sure if she's dead or not. I forgot, but she was so powerful, absurdly powerful. No one could stand in her way.
Right, and that story, or at least that movie, is kind of comical, kind of hammy. To the point that it's like, okay, it's kind of a Thor's Day Off adventure.
Yeah, that's why I didn't really like it that much.
Yeah, a lot of people say that it's not as serious as the other movie, because the other movies were serious and dark and Shakespearean and whatever.
I mean Dark World was kind of dumb, but it had Heimdall take a sword and slice a ship in half with it. So I'm sold. That's
So there's various instances of Mary Sue, and you have to know which one you're talking about. And if you don't know the definitions, you can't use this one-size-fits-all criteria. You have to know what genre, what field of writing this is in. If it's poetic, like a short story is a very specific style for a genre. And you're talking about a derivative work anyway. It's fan fiction, so it's...
Yeah, and the Trekkie's Tale was really short. It's maybe one or two paragraphs long.
Right.
It's very short. She wasn't trying to make like the end-all be-all definition. She was just making a fun little story to make fun of all these characters written by lonely housewives.
Yeah, pretty much. So if people think that Star Trek novels are science fiction or good writing, I like Peter David. He's done some Star Trek novels, but I wouldn't call those novels specifically great. Peter Wright also does comic books. He does all sorts of other novels. So you got to know different works of literature. You have to know why these terms exist. You can't just use a blanket approach. And this is the problem with Wit and Folly. She does not know these terms. She does not know the other definitions. And I've never heard of verba, because why would I? And what definitions could possibly be useful to me? And already the two that I've seen, I already know. So it's like, okay, fine, you could use those, but you have to gauge them. You have to compare them and see why and why not. And that's what hopefully we're going to do tonight.
The rules for a Mary Sue are as follows. Number 1, a young or youngest officer in Starfleet.
Okay, so we already talked about this.
Yeah, that's not an absolute necessity for Mary Sue. It just happened to be in that story.
Never seen this. Some other archetypes of Mary Sue-ness would have this, but not the general one. So,
for example, if you put Obi-Wan Kenobi in a I don't know, a modern setting, like an action movie setting, he would probably be a Mary Sue, because he could do things no one else can do.
Right.
And he breaks the rules to fit his needs, because he can do Jedi stuff
that no one else has seen, or is, the Jedi are mostly gone, so he has the only power. Yeah. So there's all sorts of explanations we could apply, but we kind of know that character. And for someone who doesn't, unless the story tells us, oh, he used to be this master wizard back in the day.
And the Force exists in this universe. So if the Force didn't exist in the universe, we could still use the Force, and regardless of age.
Right.
That's just one thing that they'd like to do, because it was lonely housewives and like to imagine themselves back when they were like in their high school age or whatever.
Yeah, there's plenty of comic books out there, especially manga, where you have these shonen manga type guys who are reincarnated and they have all these superpowers and they're going to another world and they're 15, or maybe they're babies. It doesn't really, like, there's stories where they get incarnated as a slime or another monster, or one of them is a hot springs. It's ridiculous stories. But
no, and to put in perspective, Rey does technically meet the standard still, because she is relatively young. Just like Lieutenant Mary Sue is relatively young to be a lieutenant in a militarized organization, Rey is a relatively young, in Jedi terms, because she's able to perform all these different powers, like dominating minds and all this other stuff and all this, I don't know, wisdom and power that she has without training. And she's able to accomplish power on a level that of someone older usually. Because remember, Luke took quite a while to get to the level he did by the Return of the Jedi, and I don't think he was really able to move mountains at that point. He wasn't that quite at that level yet. But
Well,
Yoda was. Yoda lifted a ship out of a swamp. So if you want to do that, compare that to apples to oranges or oranges to oranges, then Rey has the power of someone much older than they should be. She has the power of someone much older and wiser, a Jedi much older and wiser than her. But she still has it, even though she's at a young age. So that technically could fit still. It's relatively speaking.
Yeah, it's hard to stretch these terms. I want to keep it as straight as for. I think she's just referring to age in general, and
Yeah.
to me, 19 is still a teen. So, sorry.
Fun fact, at some point in the discussions with George Lucas, 2 of the main characters were teenagers, but when writing on Episode 7 began, Lucasfilm decided instead to make Rey the same age as Luke and Leia in the original film, which is 19. I don't think Rey fits this stereotype. She is young, yes, but she's not unusually young for a Star Wars story. There's a blurb in the Last Jedi visual dictionary that
Yeah, she's unusually young to have this much power.
Right.
Even if she were the same age as Luke and Leia when they started off their journey, they had to start off their journey. Rey kind of just begins power-wise at the finish line. She in the first movie, she's already dominating minds, and she's already out force powering trained Jedi like Kylo Ren, and she's doing all sorts of other things. She reads Kylo Ren's. Not only does she reject Kylo Ren's mind probe, she reads his mind in return. So this is not they're on the same level here. Luke Skywalker at the very end of the movie was able to finally produce some practical use of the Force, and that was to guide his missiles into the Death Star's ventilation shaft or whatever it was. And not only that, it wasn't just the Force that did it. He had practice doing it because remember, I think the line was they used to target swamp rats back home. So he had practice doing it. He just used the Force to kind of as a supplemental force to help him guide that missile into the ventilation shaft or whatever that is.
If we're talking about age specifically, and the definition is the young or youngest in Starfleet, we could say she's probably the young or youngest on, was it planet she's on?
Jakku. Yeah.
Jakku. She's like by herself. I don't know any other younger people than her on the planet. They're all alien to her. So we don't get to see much of age on the planet. But if we're talking about organization or a community, I would probably make her, that's what we've seen, that I could identify as human and being of a certain age. She's obviously a young woman, but youngest, okay, I could say she's the youngest. I mean, this is not my definition. I'm just going by what the movie shows me. So unless, again, if someone could show me in the movie a younger character on Jakku than Rey, then okay, I'll go with that. I'll be wrong. I don't mind that. Because, again, this is not my definition. I'm just using the terms as best I can.
Yeah, because a Mary Sue isn't something that was it has to meet this criteria. A Mary Sue is a badly written character.
Right.
And not just a badly written character, it's a character treated unfairly by the plot. So it could be a character who's too powerful that's running through a plot that treats them like a king.
It's like a sacrificial lamb character. It's he's such an interesting guy, and then boom, he's gone to play with our heartstrings. It's like, oh, I didn't see that coming, you bastard, you evil writer person.
It's a fulfillment of the author's power fantasy.
Exactly, the writer wants that to happen, and it's oh so obvious. And yeah, maybe it did tug your heartstrings. If that was the point, then it succeeded as the goal of the story was supposed to do. Whereas with the Mary Sue character, it's like, yep, definitely an author on board moment, but a bunch of other things to come with it. So let's continue.
It notes that the Empire uses so-called sub-adults for many jobs at their bases, mainly for the kids that weren't strong or able enough to become stormtroopers.
Okay, so why are we talking about the Empire? I don't get it.
So if anything, the choice to age her up and not have her be, let's say, 16, goes in the opposite direction of a Mary Sue archetype.
No, it doesn't. She's the youngest. As the definition says, of the planet, she has nothing to do with the Empire. She has nothing to do, as far as I can tell, for the Resistance at this point. So,
She shows no interest in joining the Resistance anyway. ever.
Even if there was like a younger girl or a younger boy in the Resistance, it'd be like, so what? What does it have anything to do with Rey?
She just kind of lands in the Resistance by happen chance because she just wants to help BB-8, and then
That's it.
that's her only goal in the beginning of the movie, and then she just kind of wanders into the Resistance and starts going through the motions.
Yeah, it's a very odd definition, but again, we have to work with it. And already she's trying to say, no, she's too old. It's like, okay, based on who?
Too old to begin the training.
Relative to who? No one else on the planet is younger than her. Okay, great.
I mean, because Lieutenant Mary Sue is old. I mean, she's young, relatively speaking.
Right.
And so, I mean, she could be in another setting, another scenario. She might be the old one.
Yeah, I think
like if she was playing pretend.
I think this speaks to her aptitude because she was the youngest in her class to graduate or something like that, the top of her class or something, and she just happened to be a genius, right?
They usually are super geniuses, top of the class, sort of thing, unless they're an anti-Sue, but this is not the case here.
So really, we have no other basis of comparison aside from Luke and Anakin,
right?
And she blows them out of the water. So.
And Luke and Anakin were both chosen ones too. If you still want to do the Clone Wars canon of Anakin Skywalker,
right.
He was, I think, literally made by the Force. Like he was a manifestation, a physical manifestation of the Force. And even he couldn't do this stuff when he started out. I mean, yeah, when he was a little kid, he blew up a ship, and he's kind of Mary Sue-ish there. But
right,
when
the first episode for sure, yeah.
Yeah, when he came into his, when he became a Jedi, when he grew up and became a Jedi, and was able to use the Force powers and train and everything. He couldn't do this stuff that Rey could. We never got to see him lift mountains and dominate minds with no effort at all, with little to no training or no training at all. Like
right.
if he had Anakin Skywalker as a kid dominated minds, that would still be ridiculous.
Right, but in the first movie, we could say that if we apply the criteria that we've used for a while now to Anakin as a kid, it's like, yep, he pretty much fits all the criteria.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's a few he doesn't, but yeah.
Number 2, adored by everyone on the ship, especially Kirk, Spock, and McCoy.
Okay, that's also one of the definitions we use. Instantly liked. So
instantly liked. That's a good one. It's because it's a commonplace.
Yeah.
Usually they're either instantly liked by people, or if they're disliked, those are people who are usually instantly evil or unredeemable, like a two-dimensionally evil.
Right.
So in this case, everyone does love Rey when they meet her. Everyone does. And the only bad guy, the main bad guy, Kylo Ren, he is seen as redeemable, but guess what? He also likes Rey.
Right. So the comparison is to Anakin as a kid. Not everyone likes Anakin, but Qui-Gon is like really crazy over him, right? So the council are afraid of him and da-da-da. But Qui-Gon thinks he's the chosen one, etc., and then they accept him. So it's like, oh, you're wrong. Nope. Now you're good. So yeah.
And also in comparison, Luke in his first movie, Han and Luke didn't like each other very much. Luke distrusted Han immediately. Han just thought Luke was some snot-nosed, arrogant kid. But Han obviously wasn't being played as the bad guy. He was just kind of a scoundrel type.
Right.
But he wasn't portrayed as a villain. And the other way around either. If you want to say Han Solo was in Mary Sue, that didn't count for Han Solo either. So it's mutual. It is a human interaction. But if Luke were a Mary Sue, Han Solo, for not liking Luke, would be labeled usually as an evil bad guy.
Right. Same example in the cantina, the guy who wants to kill Luke for whatever reason. So a lot of people, even the princess doesn't like Luke. It's like, who the hell are you? Oh, jeez, it's just to save his ass.
He just makes fun. The first thing he does is rescue her, and the first thing she does is insult him.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of getting pounded on in the beginning because he's just a snot-nosed little kid, pretty much.
Right.
He has no idea what's going on.
So she must be adored by all of our main male leads.
Okay, again, she's all of our male main leads. It's like, well, no.
Why
everyone.
male?
Everyone.
Why male main leads?
Yeah.
It's everyone. It's everyone.
She's
loved by Luke. She's loved by Leia when they first meet.
Yeah, the robots like her. The big hairy rug likes her. Everyone likes her.
Even Leia. So even the female characters, even though you say specifically male for some reason, I never heard that, but even Leia likes her pretty much immediately. I think they meet eyes and they start hugging or something. Like she immediately likes Rey.
Yeah, she has a fight with two guards. I can't remember that. I guess they don't like her because they're fighting her, and she fights them off with a stick. So,
And they're bad guys.
and they're technically bad guys, right? Same with the guy who feeds her when she gives scrap to that guy.
Oh yeah, he's like, I'll give you like a half portion or something.
But he's a bad guy too. So it's like
He's
all
a
right.
bad guy too, and he's not even sympathetic bad guy. He's a two-dimensional straight bad guy.
Yeah. So it's like all right.
So if
all the
it's the
bad
definition
guys dislike her, unless it's a main bad guy. And then he sort of is interested in her. It's like okay, yep,
Like with Mary Sue, you're not a bad guy. You don't dislike her because you're a bad guy. You're a bad guy because you dislike her.
right. And that's because they are always good. This is the next criteria. I don't know if it's the next criteria, but it's in our list. Like we have, always good and instantly liked kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Actually does sort of happen with Rey.
Does sort of happen. No, it does happen. Thank you very much.
It happens quite often with Mary Sue.
But you can't really scream Mary Sue for this one alone.
No, we're not. We're just saying it's part of the criteria, which is true. Thank you.
Finn's "you got a cute boyfriend" comment seems to just be for laughs.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it does. So what's your point?
Got a boyfriend? Cute boyfriend?
None of your business, that's why.
And her unresponsive
Yeah, but what if it isn't? I mean, why say that? Why put that in there unless... yeah, it's for comedy. But why would Finn as a character say that, ask Rey that question?
Exactly. He likes her.
So yeah, he likes her. Either that or you can go with that other interpretation where hey, you got a cute boyfriend I can steal from you? That interpretation where Finn is gay?
Why would a
asking,
person ask another person of their marital status? Let me
hey,
guess.
by the way, you got a boyfriend? You got a cute boyfriend? It's like, what does Finn have a buddy back at the barracks that he wants to hook her up with? No. He wants to know because he likes her.
That's simple, guys. It's pretty obvious. Of course, played for laughs, right? Of course, exactly.
What BB-8 want me to ask you because BB-8 kind of has a thing. No,
Finn's a bumbling idiot, guys. In case you haven't realized it. Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
emphasizes that. By now, it seems clear that Rey and Finn are simply friends. Also, Han doesn't initially like Rey when he meets her. And
Really?
How? Explain to me how he does not like her. What? Because he's neutral to her? He was outright hostile to Luke. How does he not like? How does he? What expression does Han Solo give? Portraying to us that, conveying to us that he does not like Rey.
The only thing
What exactly does he do?
Yeah, the only thing I could think of was they caught them on their ship, right? And they were hiding, so they found them out. Like, okay, get out of there, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden they're trying to get away, and she instantly fixes the ship, and he's like, "Oh, you're amazing. Okay."
Come along with me. They didn't do anything until they get to the bar, and then he's like, "You should fly around with me, and we should go on adventures together." I mean, that's more of a fan fiction moment.
He's effectively giving her a job. It's like, well, again, if it starts off bad, the second time it's like, oh, we're fixed now. We know you're good. Which is, the second time is always, like, even with Rey, when she fires the gun, the second time she scores a hit, it's always like, first try, you miss, second try, you get. Same with the mind control. Same with Kylo Ren fighting with the lightsaber. Everything is like, oh, I get it now. Boom, I'm a master. It's like, whoa.
And because either one, she can do all this because she heard stories about Jedi before, or she's siphoned all the knowledge from Kylo Ren's head and is now better at it.
Which is just insane.
Those are both insane scenarios.
There is no example that I could find in the EU of Jedi or Sith sucking knowledge, like all the knowledge. Maybe a specific memory. I think there might be an actual power like that, but not like skills and like how to fight. Everything. Like, you can't. There's nothing I'm aware of. So,
if that were true, then Knights of the Old Republic would be a way shorter game.
oh yeah. Jeez. we erased your memory. Oh, it's all back.
It's all back.
of course, I mean platonically. She has to prove herself to him in order to gain his respect and mentorship. I wouldn't say that he adored her immediately.
Okay, if she starts talking about a womb and that the Millennium Falcon cockpit is like
Falcon's a womb.
is very sexualized.
The sexiest scene.
The second sexiest is like, okay, you're reading way too much in this criteria, lady.
Kylo Ren, on the other hand, is taken with Rey, but for reasons I won't get into. Rey and Ben are sort of the whole point of this.
See, even she acknowledges that Kylo Ren likes Rey. Therefore, he's not truly a bad guy. He seems kind of redeemable because he likes her. If you disliked her, he would be a straight up villain.
Well, I think he's the biggest or most noticeable character who flip flops all the time. We
Yeah.
don't know what he's doing. It's like, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm neutral, I don't care, I'm nihilistic, I'm bad again. It's like, okay.
It's almost like he's being written by 10 different people.
It's like, what's going on? It's like, I think Ryan Johnson's just there to just mess stuff up. You're like, why? What's going on in this story?
Trilogy, so their connection inevitably has to begin as soon as they meet. Number 3, has extraordinary abilities.
Okay, so we agree that the second part, it qualifies her. Okay. 3, has extraordinary abilities. This is unexplained abilities.
Yeah, this is. I'm interested in seeing how she's going to say that Rey's abilities are not extraordinary. They're even extraordinary for Star Wars universe.
Yeah, or overpowered abilities. I'd say overpowered is our definition, because when you see her do things that we know have a certain level of competency or aptitude, she's already not only mastered that, she's beyond the master level. So that is the problem with Rey. She's not only amazing, she is beyond amazing the second try.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we get into weird territory, and the Force is to blame, because it's basically magic.
Yeah, but I don't care the reason. It's still true, okay?
The Force is to blame, even though he has extraordinary abilities in the Force without training, even though it's been established for decades. You need training to get this strong with the Force.
Right.
And I think someone made an argument where, this Force is just a supercharge. That's why it's called The Force Awakens. Well, if that were true, then Kylo Ren would also be, he would be stronger than she is.
Way stronger, yeah.
Way stronger. Because not only did he had the experience of training under not one but 2 legendary masters, but he also just killed his dad, which he being part of the Sith would mean that he becomes more emotional, which means he becomes stronger. So he should have been way overpowering Rey, but he didn't. She actually ended up winning.
Which would have made a perfectly good villain in terms of, I guess, the hero's journey, if you want to use that as the pattern, because the hero needs to have a power level lower than the villain. The villain has to reign supreme until we hit the climax. And that's where we see her train to become better, to overcome the hurdle that is the villain. And it never happens. She's better than him.
She always wins. She wins every single time.
Yeah. Well, there's one time where she gets captured, but that's like...
She gets captured, and then she not only does she gets captured, she gets interrogated, and then from that interrogation, she gains every power.
That's the fanboy explanation why she's strong. Because she could read Kylo's red mind for a few seconds and download all his information like the Matrix.
Just download all his information. Who knew you could do that? So if that were true, then she apparently discovered something new, a new rule in the Force that generations after generations of Jedi Masters and wise Jedi and Sith who are always seeking more power never found out, which is another Mary Sue trait that the laws, logic kind of bend around here. Things just happen, even if it's never been done before. There's new things that happen so that the plot can go on and that she can have the things that she needs to carry out the plot.
I don't think I have the patience to go through all of the tropes to see, this is the flavor of Rey. Like she has this of this guy. It's like, it's just bad writing, guys. You don't have to worry about the sub definition or the sub archetype. It's like, okay, we get it. It's bad writing.
Rey is incredibly powerful in the Force, and after seeing The Last Jedi, we know why. She was created by the Force itself.
Okay.
She was created by... Is she say she was created by the Force?
Yeah, so either she thinks she's like Anakin.
How?
I don't know.
When was this told to us during either of the movies?
Well, the only possible explanation I have, and this is really stretching the truth here, is that with Snoke, he's saying, there's light and dark, and light comes to match it. And you're like, okay, yeah, but that doesn't mean that she was literally created by the Force.
Yeah, I mean, but technically, I think Luke was supposed to fulfill that role also, just because the Force is creating, I don't know, that light to match it. Doesn't mean it's creating a person.
Yeah,
she has parents.
This is a problem with the subjective nature of prophecy and this whole bullshit explanation of balance, which, as we heard from Freddie Prinze Jr. there, that the balance is everything. And you're like, oh, really?
According to Freddie Prinze Jr., isn't no training, all that skill, knowledge, wisdom, doesn't matter, because you can put a if the dark side is winning, you can put the lightsaber in the hands of a 10-year-old and he'll win.
Right. Which is ridiculous. I mean, that's not a story. That's just
That's
that would
really,
be
really dumb.
That would be an offshoot of the Deus Ex, because it's like, hey, there's a rule in nature that says whatever this happens, there's a balance to that. And you're like, okay, so can you give me an instance of that? Okay, well, here's Rey, and she's going to conquer all the dark side. And you're like, okay, so when that happens, is the dark side going to come back and kill her? Like, how does that make any sense? It sort of defeats the whole point of all the movies. When Luke triumphs, saves the galaxy, it's like, oh nope, he didn't. Someone else came by and took over the power, and that's probably what's going to happen in the next movie with Palpatine coming back. Oh, he was never gone. He just went away. Okay, then it's just this nonsense, psychosocial aspect of existence in this Star Trek or the Star Wars world, where if you do something bad, there's going to be some good to come by in this super relative terms of good and bad. Well, obviously the Jedi are good. It's like, really? Okay, sure, that's good.
Sort of like Anakin. The title of the first...
Sort of like Anakin? No. Either he was created by the Force and Rey was, or she wasn't. Which one is it?
Also, I think in the original, the prequel movies, it was insinuated that he wasn't just born of the Force, that someone made him through the Force. I think it was Palpatine, wasn't it? I think it was Palpatine.
She's not being clear. Either way, I have to take marks from that, because you can't just say, yeah, she was just created like Anakin. Well, we know how Anakin was created, so no, you're wrong.
Yeah, we're not as specifically told that Rey was a product of the Force. As far as we know, she has parents. She might have been influenced by the Force because of being the chosen one. Doesn't mean she was created by the Force.
Yeah, and so
just chosen by it.
And this is a very odd definition of the third criteria, because it's just about being overpowered. It's not that by virtue of being overpowered you were immaculate conceived. It's like, no, it's not part of the criteria. That's just her interpretation of comparing her to Anakin. It's like, why are we on this topic?
And more importantly, again, we're not told specifically that's what happened. It's not even insinuated.
Yeah. So I don't like her insinuation at very best of.
Which means it kind of means that she's stuffing more fan theory
exactly
into this argument to prove her argument,
which is always wrong. So, what are you gonna do?
Film hints at this. The Force awakens in Rey. During the interrogation scene, Rey and Ben see into each other's minds, and it is confirmed in the Last Jedi novel.
No, it's not.
That this allowed Rey to sort of catch up with him. And
sort of catch up? Okay, again, what does that mean? Can you give me an example where she started downloading information like the Matrix in some sort of psychometric power that she also suddenly has?
And again, she's going back to using novels and stuff to explain this. It should be in the movie. So again, another proven point. This is a badly written show.
Exactly. So again, the third point was she's overpowered. If she starts downloading energy or whatever from Kylo Ren's thought pattern sweat shit, I don't care. She's still overpowered. So still a Mary Sue.
And just like with Freddie Prinze Jr., his even if Freddie Prinze Jr. is right about the Force, just balancing itself out no matter what, it would be stupid. Why would you do that? It would be wrong, because you wouldn't have a story, because now your hero doesn't have to work for anything. She gains all of her powers right up front.
All Rey would have to do was, when she was fighting Luke, was touch him, and it's like, oh, you downloaded all of Luke's powers. Now you're, I don't know, a second tier god. Touch Snoke. Now you're a third. Like, how far does this go? Oh no, it only worked with Kylo. Yeah, sorry. Why?
And if that were true, it should make that a huge plot point. That she has the ability to absorb knowledge and Force powers from other masters. Now that would be a little different scenario, but it's just something that kind of happens so that she can get to where she needs to be.
Yeah. So again, this is another fan theory bullshit, and I don't care if it's in the novelization in some form. That's still bad writing, guys. Okay, you can't just add. You can't have a derivative, you can't have I call it a companion work, where it's basically a novelization. You can't just write new shit in there. Okay, the movie should speak for itself.
Yeah, the novelization to give you maybe some supplemental, like give you their explore their feelings at that time, or maybe give us a little extra information we don't know. Maybe maybe introduce another character, like a minor character, maybe like a lieutenant or something that Kylo Ren went to, maybe a different scene that helped flesh out the characters a little bit more, but no additional major plot point information that will be going into the next movie.
Yeah,
because we need to know that from the first movie.
It's like imagined if there was a second novelization of Harry Potter, and it's based off the movies, but the author wants to do all this crazy stuff with relationships and make them bisexual and all. It's like, oh yeah, and everyone's poly and this person's bi. So it's like, wait a second, why is this like? What's the point of this? It would just be as bad as if Rey had all these other superpowers we never heard of. It's just silly. It's dumb. It has nothing to do with the movie. So let's continue.
Abilities. So while she is very powerful, it's kind of the point of her whole story and her arc.
Okay, so she is overpowered. Thank you. We agree.
Okay, so now I guess her argument from here on is going to explain to us why her being absurdly overpowered is okay.
Yeah, but that's the point she was trying to make, that she is overpowered, and she's agreeing. It's like, yes, we agree.
Yeah, she is overpowered. So that's why I'm guessing are you going to argue from now on that her being overpowered is acknowledged, but somehow okay?
It's going to be something like, well, that's the point of the story. It's like, really? That's the point of the story, to show us that she's overpowered?
I doubt that. That's a dumb point of the story.
Superman is strong.
That's the point of the story, is that he's strong.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole movie of that one would be just him lifting stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it.
He could fly while lifting stuff. Ooh. Great movie.
Because if we're going to have Rey be this overpowered and it's going to be a main plot point, that's the main point of the story, and it's a huge deal, then there should be an opposite version of her. And that's not Kylo Ren. He's kind of a normal guy in comparison to her. So there should be like this other hugely powerful person just like her, so that the Force can be balanced again. And that's who she's supposed to be fighting. And that person should be introduced, or at least referenced, from the first movie. Because this is a trilogy. But they don't get that. She's just awesome. She's just overpowered and almost nigh unstoppable.
And
with no opposite to meet her.
And Snoke is gone, so it's like, oh, okay, well, that's it.
We thought Snoke was going to do something, but he just died within 5 minutes of meeting her because she's a Mary Sue.
Her goodness was so great, and his evil was so great that as soon as she came anywhere near Rey, boom.
That's what happens when you have a villain and who meets a Mary Sue.
Yeah, they
he
explode.
Just dies. We're lucky that he died on screen for us to see. Usually, sometimes this actually happens off screen. Oh, you went to? Oh, yeah, she went to go meet Snoke. What happened to him? Oh, she won. He's dead now. Oh, okay, that's cool. And we don't get to see it. It's like kind of how the whole Starkiller based run was happening off screen because it was important.
How did
it's kind of happening.
How did Phasma get off the base? Well, it happened. How did Rey get off the Super Dreadnought? Yeah, well, she stole a ship. Really? She stole a ship and she piloted it.
I mean, she's a Mary Sue. All she had to do was get up from. She wasn't even knocked out by what knocked out Kylo Ren because she's awesome. So she just walked out and stole one of the probably one of the most well guarded ships in the entire ship, and just left. I mean, why not?
Kylo Ren got hurt. Rey, no problem.
Yeah, Rey she just absorbed that because she's awesome.
She absorbs boots to the head with. It doesn't hurt her. Okay.
She's a walking god. Why wouldn't she be able to do that?
Compare this with a Mary Sue who is placed in a world not with magic, but one of science fiction.
Okay, I actually know this story. The empath, I think she's mute, and she's needed for she heals. She's actually healing Kirk here in this scene, I believe. So I don't actually consider her Mary Sue. So I don't know why she's showing it. It's like
we'll find out.
Yeah, it's like this sort of a test. Like there's this super. I can't remember the villain or the characters, the aliens who have Kirk and I think McCoy, and they're trapped, and they're playing this. They're trying to figure out their minds or their hearts or whatever, and they're using this person. This person dies, I think. So it's a very strange, odd story about what does this alien want, but in no way is this character, the empath, Mary Sue. That's kind of. I mean, we have Spock, who's a telepath, and she's an empath. It's like, okay, well, she's not overpowered.
These sort of things happen in Star Trek universe all the time. It's not an unusual character to have. Is it an empath? I mean, there's a whole race of those people.
The Betazoids, they're mostly telepathic, but as we learned with Deanna, that there are some who do not develop those skills. And Deanna, in the Star Trek novellas, Imzadi, we learn about the Betazoid homeworld, and Deanna actually had to train to become telepathic. So you actually can learn and focus your emotions or your sensible feelings of perceiving feelings outside of yourself, and convert that into thoughts and all the process and all the culture and all the, like, why they had naked weddings and meditation places and all the wonderful, like, that was Peter David asked the creators of Star Trek, hey, could I actually flesh out the world? And they said, sure, go ahead. So the concept that there's like this, not a tier system, but they're sort of looked down on. Like, imagine growing up when everyone has two legs and you have one. That's how it was kind of like with Deanna. Like, she could never play with the other games with other kids because she couldn't do those thoughts. She couldn't have those telepathic things. So, yeah, that sort of definition is in the extended world of Star Trek, and it lends itself better to science fiction because that's mostly what Star Trek is, even if it is sort of low tier writing. But it's dramatic. If you like Star Trek, novellas are for you. Go for it. So in this example of the empath, I really, really don't think this is a Mary Sue. And I'm curious why she got this. So I'll have to rewatch that episode to find out. But empathy and being mute and then dying, I think she could heal too. She could heal whatever was causing pain in Kirk's mind. Very cool powers, right? But not overpowered and not unheard of. So.
Who oftentimes does have impossible and even mystical abilities in a story where that does not belong.
What do you mean it doesn't belong? It's science fiction.
It's been established. It's not like she just came out of nowhere and there was no unusual characters before she entered the scene.
It is possible that we've never encountered, like, I don't remember the lore of that particular.
But I mean, even from the pilot episode, even when we had we were back with Captain Pike, there was still, it set the scene immediately that there were unusual things that could take place in this world. Now, if you were in a thriller scenario or something like that with ordinary everyday world and everyday rules, and then someone unexplained just comes in and start using telepathic powers, then we have some questions that need to be answered. But in a world that has established that something like this is possible, like in the Star Trek universe, then yeah, there's nothing unusual about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Different. I'm trying to remember the original one. I know there's this character who becomes so intelligent, like he's reading all the database on the Enterprise and becomes so smart that he starts seeing everyone as ants.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think it's called The Cage. I can't remember the exact name of the episode, but it's basically a bunch of telepathic aliens. And there's this dude who's like becoming godlike. So they set the bar pretty high. Same with Star Trek Next Generation, they encounter Q, who is God essentially. So Star Trek is known for that, doing crazy things.
Yeah, they're also well known for their godlike creatures, and they're not Mary Sue's really either. Even though Q is omnipotent, he's literally omnipotent as far as they said, and pretty much can do anything. But people like that character because they don't play him as a Mary Sue. He's challenging and he's challenged in return.
Yeah, and if you're talking about gods, there's plenty of gods in the old series as well. There's the Squire of Gothos, who is very Q-like. In the Next Generation, there's Nagilum. There's that other dude who like wiped out an entire species, and he was living alone in his made-up house with his dead wife.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That one's cool.
That was really cool. There was those aliens who had that planet that they threw the Enterprise like 2 months out because they wanted to take their children because they couldn't reproduce. So there's all kinds of super powerful beings out there in the Star Trek lore. So maybe at the time of this airing, this character never existed. It would seem godlike, but
I mean, it would still be an acceptable character within the Star Trek universe unless the plot treated her like she was infallible.
Right, and
She,
plus,
she was always right, always won,
plus we also
etc.
have to have the one of your favorite elements, which is the author on board moment, or the author insert. So,
Right.
and that's we have to see that, and that a side character that's throwaway, sacrificial lamb, has healing powers and is empathetic or empathic. It's like, okay, that's a lot of abilities, but
If you can make him work, then it works. They're treated well by the plot.
exactly, if it works within the story, and she's pretty much a pawn of the aliens who are trying to figure out what's going on. So, again, we have to look at the story to properly analyze it, but I don't think her example is correct. Let us continue. This is an interesting one, number 4. I've never heard this one before, so let's see.
Number 4, wins extraordinary honors. Compared to Luke's ending in A New Hope, Rey gets no literal honor or reward by the end of The Force Awakens. By receiving the Falcon and being the one who journeys to go and get Luke, she does get a sort of figurative reward. But this is mainly because she is the one the lightsaber called to. She was chosen by the Force.
Okay, so the lightsaber calls to her. Is that not an honor? Does she not get the lightsaber? Does she not?
Considering that never really happened before, and that's a whole new rule made up for just for Rey, it's a pretty honorable thing to happen, I think.
Then she's suddenly the de facto owner of the Falcon, even though Chewie should be.
She just gets it like it's in a video game or something.
It's like
And it comes with Chewie, apparently.
Chewie would be like, yeah, I guess you could own it, but Chewie's like the guy who's flying it mostly. But okay,
I guess Han didn't really. I don't know. Was he ever friends with Chewie, or did Chewie just come with the ship? That's what it seems like here.
it's strange. I think when you talk about the Falcon, you suddenly talk about Chewie like they're one and the same. Like every time you think of Chewbacca, it's always with the Millennium Falcon. He's always very close by. So
I don't think there was any time for an award ceremony. I think they messed with that at
yeah,
that
this
time.
is a very odd. I've never heard of this criteria before.
I never heard of this criteria either. Wins extraordinary honors. I don't think that's I never heard of that trait, or that thing that happens. Because everything else, I mean, what happens? It's because she doesn't win extraordinary honors, quote unquote, means she's not a Mary Sue.
Like no one gives her a cake. It's like, oh, so then she's not a Mary Sue. It's like, what? That's not.
And Luke was the guy who blew up the Death Star. Almost everyone else was dead. You think? I think a medal is pretty good. It called for at least.
Would be nice to give him something.
Yeah.
If it makes sense to give her something, then great. But did she blow up Starkiller Base?
No, she sure didn't.
Okay.
I think they might have helped a little bit by some metric. I think they did something, but she didn't blow it up. The pilots did, and Poe didn't get. He didn't get anything either, as far as we know.
Yeah, so it was mostly Finn and Han and Poe, pretty much.
Yeah, she got captured and rescued herself because she's a Mary Sue.
She rescued herself, exactly.
And then she defeated Kylo Ren because she's a Mary Sue, and he stands no chance to get a Mary Sue. No one really does. And then she kind of just left, and they went back home. She didn't actually do anything. Everyone else did all the important stuff.
Yeah, so the fact that the story never gave her a gift for being awesome or whatever is almost, it's like, oh yeah, it's a different story. Okay, so should a story need a character to receive an award? Like, did the original Mary Sue receive an award for saving the ship? I mean,
she died, and then she was respected at the funeral.
So
but that's about it, I think.
Okay, so her corpse got a proper send off. Is that?
I don't think that's extraordinary honors. That's not extraordinary.
I'm trying to think how this compares to the original Mary Sue. I don't think it does. But again, this is another definition. I've never heard of this term. I would say this is really under contention. And I mean, can you imagine
if you want to,
an overpowered character, like an anime character in manga? Because there's plenty of isekai genres out there, or isekai characters that don't get extraordinary honors or gifts. Like they come. You could argue that by definition of being overpowered, that is the gift. And you could say, well, Rey is overpowered by her very nature. That's her gift from the Force. Same with the lightsaber from the Force. So this is a very strange way of Is it after something? Does she have to do something to get the gift? Is it, again, with isekai, you're reborn. We're going to give you level 9 lightning magic. Okay. That would be an honor. It's a cheat, but that's the point of the isekai genre. You have this overpowered character that does stuff.
That's why so many people hate the genre, as far as I know.
They're all the same. There's like this, until you get the actual good ones where they're not overpowered. Like the one I'm reading is about this engineer. He was this bottom tier civics or mechanical engineer in the normal world, and he got reborn as a prince, but his previous prince was like a jerk. So he starts using technology to improve his life and improve the village he's in. It's like, hey, this is cool. And it's using just basic science, like he creates muskets and flintlocks and cannons and what have you. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. See, the problem is not that she gets an honor. It's that the story makes sense why she does these things. So if she did something great, does she deserve the honor? Yes. Then great. It's fine. That's good writing. Luke, what did he do? He blew up the Death Star. What did he get? An award. So did Han. Why? He helped him out. Fantastic. He doesn't have to be a god. He doesn't have to do all this other crap. He doesn't have to be born with the gift. It has to make sense. That's all good writing does. It has to make sense.
Yeah, if they're treated by the plot where they were just handed everything,
right? Even
though it doesn't make any sense according to the logic or the previously established lore, that's pretty Mary Sue-ish.
Right. So if we knew why she was so powerful, where the power level came from, why it's bigger than others, why she has no personality, why she's always good, why it doesn't feel like the writers, pushing her along, then she wouldn't be a Mary Sue. We wouldn't have to go through this criteria all the time, but we have to because people make these stupid lists, and this makes no sense. Extraordinary honors.
Just accept that she's a Mary Sue. Okay, she is one. Okay, she is one. It's not because she's a woman.
What, do you want a party? She's written like you want a party? Hey, you're amazing, Ray. Here's a birthday cake.
Oh, she didn't get extraordinary. She did all these extraordinary things and defeated a person she had no business defeating, and did so very easily. But she didn't get a medal at the end, so she's not a Mary Sue. She didn't die at the end. So
that's
she's not a Mary
weird.
Sue.
That's just a silly definition.
So apparently you can do anything you want. It's a get out of jail free card, where you can make the most absurd Mary Sue-ish character, overpowered character, always winning character. Everyone likes them, but they didn't get awarded at the end, and they are older than 16, so they're not a Mary Sue.
Yeah,
are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is stupid. That is dumb. That's an excuse to get out of calling someone you want to like, you want to be considered a good character, a Mary Sue, despite them being a Mary Sue. That's a ridiculous notion.
It's a very odd criteria. So I can't agree with it, but probably because I've never heard it before. I have to go to TV tropes one more time and look for this. You have a Mary Sue when they go to Burger King and they get the crown.
So, yeah, my character just walked in and never held a gun before, but took out a gun, shot up a bunch of enemy sharpshooters just right up front, or just outdrew a bunch of gunslingers. They never held a gun before, or fired a gun before, but outdrew them all, killed them all, and got all the rewards, all the treasure they had stolen. Walked out with it real easy, like. But I know that sounds Mary Sue-ish, but they didn't get rewarded at the end with a medal, and they're 18, not 16. So No, not Mary Sue there at all.
You know what? If this example existed throughout other stories, then it would have already been a pattern, and it would have been on a criteria in someone's list, right? Mm-hmm. And we say, oh, you know what? A Mary Sue would have an award ceremony thing. But you know
got
what?
A super chat.
Does it?
You got a super chat by Andrew.
Oh, thank you.
You got a super chat by Andrew Clark, $5. The thing about bad writing is that it's rarely on purpose. That's rarely will characters fit definitions exactly. What? Yes, that's correct, and it's never done on purpose. And that's why all these people who actually write Mary Sue's, even though it is bad writing, they don't see it as bad writing.
Exactly.
Because they see it as good. They see, oh, this is the best thing I've ever written. And if you're a writer, if you've written things before, if you've written stories before, then you know exactly how that feels.
Oh God, yeah.
You write something out.
If you are not introspective as a writer, you're a bad writer. Okay, you could write the most popular, Transformers movie or Star Wars movie, but if you cannot look at your own work and say, hey, you know what, I could do better here. this is bad, this is this or that, but I needed to get it done, or time, or whatever. And if that doesn't happen, you're not a good writer. All the really good writers I know are self-defeating, and they're their own worst enemy. They are like, is this good? If I submit this to an editor, is he going to hate me? You know, they're always second guessing themselves. I second guess myself with my own writing. I'm still writing my book.
That's one of the probably biggest obstacles you have to overcome as a writer,
Is
knowing
yourself.
what is good, what is bad. Yeah. And I think even Neil Gaiman said something like this, where he went back. I think it's in his masterclass, actually, if you want to check that out. But he went back and to an old trunk, and he looked through his books that he wrote a long time ago when he was a kid or something. And he looked through them. He's like, "Oh yeah, they're pretty bad." But right at the end of one of them, he started to read a few lines that says, "There, that's me." He was talking about finding your voice as a writer, which as a beginning writer, you tend to copy other people's voices and other people's techniques. It takes a while and takes practice before you develop your own. And that's what he was talking about. But he took that book and said, "Oh, here's some of this author, and it sounds like this author." Then towards the end, he found a little piece that sounded like him. And that's how you know that's you're really coming into your own. And so it takes practice, and you're always second guessing yourself, and you're always trying to find the next step. What is good, what isn't.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot with the good writers. It doesn't take, like, they can just do anything. It takes them years. Like with short stories by Harlan Ellison, it takes him decades to get those stories put together. Like one story, the Deathbird, took him at least a decade, and he already had the concept, but just like writing it out to get what he wants just right, because he writes with the typewriter. So, you know, when he types, it's not just I can erase this, or I can, you know, go back and change a previous page. No, it's done. It's already fit. So he's kind of like that perfectionist sort of dude. So that's a really hard hurdle to create your writing. But his work is amazing. So, you know, every writer is different. I don't want to say there's a right or wrong way, but there's definitely rules to follow. And one of the qualities I've seen is self-destruction.
Yeah, it's a pretty, because I've seen a lot of writers too do exactly that, where they develop something wonderful or what people might think is good, but they don't think it's good. I remember I forget maybe it was Bach or Handel. I forgot which one it was. I think it was one of those two guys, but they were writing something. Maybe it was Mozart. I forget. It was one of these famous composers where they were writing something and they didn't like it themselves, and they threw it in the fire. And the friends plucked it out and said, "Well, this is amazing." But the composers thought it was bad. That's exactly the same feeling you get as a writer.
Yeah.
There's something you've written might be amazing to someone else, but to you could see all the flaws and kind of, all right, that's done. Delete that.
Yeah, sadly it happens. Okay, let's keep going.
Again, our magic system doesn't mesh well with the Mary Sue archetype because Mary Sue lives in a world without it. Number 5.
What? So you can have as long as you have a fantasy or a sci-fi world where magic exists, you can't have a Mary Sue?
No.
Yeah, but magic exists. So
you
not a
gotta
Mary
have
Sue.
tech, or you gotta have magic. There's no other way, apparently.
This is it's science fiction argument.
Oh no, it's science fantasy. It's for wizards and
Science
babies.
fantasy,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a movie about space wizards, so you can do whatever you want. That would anger anyone who is a hard sci-fi, a hard fantasy kind of, who respects hard magic systems, because there's a lot of writers and people who read these books who do respect that, a hard magic system.
Yeah, I mean, Isaac Asimov would just be crying right now. He's like, "What are you talking about? Come on!" Like, the guy got a PhD in chemistry. He wrote very good science fiction.
It's usually these the chemistry guys, the science guys who go into writing. They tend to like a more profound, rigid system of magic, and more profound, rigid systems of pretty much anything. If they go into writing, even if it's sci-fi, if it's fantasy, they tend to like these more rigid structures. So if using the argument it's science fiction or it's fantasy, you can do whatever you want, doesn't make sense to them. It won't work with these sorts of people.
Yeah. So again, we're talking about this 1966-67 publication by a lady called Verba, and she's referencing the Mary Sue or the Trekkie's tale and what it means to be a Mary Sue. That's why there's the mourned by everyone on the ship as referred to with the Enterprise. So
Yeah, it's not necessary. It's not a necessary factor.
but the problem with this definition, if you can't see, is not the last part of the sentence, it's the first part. Sometimes. Anytime you have a definition that says sometimes, that means both true and false are possible. So that's not
Sometimes dies a tragic a tragic or heroic death, after which she's mourned by everyone on the ship. So it doesn't have to happen.
right. So it's not a very good rule.
Wasn't there some guy that said that it has to happen, or it's not a Mary Sue?
Well, there have been some.
Oh my! How embarrassing!
Yeah, if you're using a definition where sometimes the criteria could be true,
My.
not the best, maybe not the most accurate criteria you're using. Okay, guys.
See, so we agree here with wit and folly. We agree here that it doesn't have to happen. Tragic death or heroic death doesn't have to happen for there to be a Mary Sue.
Okay, I gotta write that down. It's just silly. Sometimes can die.
Sometimes. Step 5. Sometimes.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, the thing is about the Mary Sue is that it is a list of sometimes and possiblies because, as I said, it is nebulous. But it's a matter of context, essentially. That's basically what surrounds a Mary Sue. Is,
yeah.
in what context does it take place?
We see the examples of Wesley Crusher. I think he died at least twice. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, at least. I wish he died more.
And Wesley Crusher, if you don't know from Star Trek: The Next Generation, he was the wonder kid of the crew. He did everything right. Everyone liked him to a degree. He got 2 promotions. He saved the Enterprise on 6 or 7 occasions. He was the Mozart as the Traveler communicated with him, and then he evolved past the point of humanity and just joined the Traveler to go travel the stars through force of volition, apparently. So
I wish it was like Kenny. Like I wish it was Wesley Crusher was treated like Kenny from Star Trek. I mean, Kenny from South Park.
Oh,
just dies every episode.
Keeps dying, comes back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, he's a Mary Sue. He might as well have resurrection powers.
So whether or not he dies or not is all within the context of what is death. Is it a tragic death? Is it a heroic death? I don't think it has to be tragic or heroic. I mean,
she doesn't have to die at all.
Well, yeah, but it's such a strange.
Even Wit and Folly agrees with us. She sometimes she dies a tragic or heroic death, but she might not have to. That's what sometimes means.
Yeah, okay, let's just keep going. This is going to be pointless.
Sometimes dies a tragic or heroic death, after which she is mourned by everyone on the ship. Now, I don't think they're going to kill off Rey.
Cool.
I don't think anyone thinks they're going to kill off Rey. It's a Disney story, after all. However, at the end of the hero's journey, there is usually some sort of resurrection or rebirth at the end, which evolves the hero and truly marks them as a myth or legend. I'm just, covering my butt in case Rey literally or figuratively dies in 9 and is then reborn.
Wow, she's suddenly concerned about the interpretation of the hero's journey and the climax of that journey supposedly happening in episode 9.
It's rigid until you can't control it anymore.
It's like, wow, definition. Of all the things to sort of watch your ass after, the hero's journey for episode 9, if you compare 7 and 8 as part of that, like, okay. She could die.
She could die, I don't know.
She could have a rebirth. Okay.
I don't want my video to be destroyed because I'm so rigidly adhering to this weird definition.
This other person we've never heard of making up at least 3 criteria that are completely immaterial or if not incorrect.
Treating a person making a solid definition from a parody story.
Right. You know what? And the funny thing is, our definition is more rigid. And it actually proves that all the criteria fit the mold. It's hilarious. We have more criteria than she does, and each of our criteria fit the mold. I don't know, like, did she miss other definitions? Did she not read more books? Did she not watch more movies? Did she not look at Luke?
That's exactly the point, because Joseph Campbell, he studied several myths, and he studied several examples, and followed a pattern to come up with his hero's journey formula.
Right.
This person just looked at Paula Smith's story, and that's it. This is what a Mary Sue is, because that's what Paula Smith said it is. Paula Smith did more research. She was more of Joseph Campbell than this other person, because Paula Smith was an editor at one of these magazines, and she saw the pattern. So essentially, her Mary Sue story was a production of the pattern that she saw, but the person who made a publication just off of her story, off the Mary Sue story, that's not a pattern. That's just one story.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going because I don't think we're going to get anything out of this.
Yeah.
This sort of death is earned and essential to the hero's journey. It's different from the unearned, tragic, or heroic death Mary Sue seems to get. Since its creation, Mary Sue has been used entirely out of context and often as a derogatory term.
Okay, again,
That part is true. Some people do use the term just because they don't like something, but there's also correct terms to use it, times to use it.
yeah, I've never seen it used as a non-derogatory term. So again, I say, give me an example of where Mary Sue, by definition, is bad writing, is good writing. Show me that. I can't find it.
Show me when bad writing is good writing.
Yeah, tell me when up is down. Can you show me a piece of literature when that happens? Like, no.
Because even if you made like a Mary Sue-ish character and it was the whole point of the book and it was satirical, it'd still be you might make it good writing, but an actual Mary Sue, it's in itself played seriously, played straight, is bad writing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like you got to know what the definition is, where it's coming from, and again, she's using the original one, but it's like, okay, great. Does every character have to be based off, or every detective in every detective fiction story have to be based off Auguste Dupin because of Edgar Allan Poe? Are we going to do the same?
Silly.
Are we going to do the same with Homer and Jason and the Argonauts and the Odyssey? I mean, that's stupid.
Yeah, it's not what happens to the character. Like if you say like it's like kind of like saying a Greek hero must go through every single step that Odysseus went through, or else not considered a Greek hero.
Yeah, it's just a strange thing to say.
They have to fight a Cyclops. They have to.
But
they
not
have to
only
meet
that, we're using another. I've never heard of Velba or whoever this person is. We're referencing another person after the fact. So yeah, there's the Trekkie's tale, and then there's other person comes along and says, no, these are the actual criteria, and then she's using that one. Like, who is this person? I've never heard of this person.
Like, apparently, just Trekkie's tale, and that's it. No, don't go in and try to come up with your own patterns, especially nowadays. I mean, Paula Smith, all she had was people, fan fiction people sent in. She wasn't going off and studying like Joseph Campbell was. So you're going to make a definition, a publication that's going to be the definitive definition of a Mary Sue. You should probably go a little bit further than just studying someone's satire.
It's strange. I think she has more to go. That was the five definitions. It's actually only four because the sometimes is not applicable. But she's got 6 more minutes left to see what she has to hopefully summarize or reference here.
Paula Smith was almost always commenting on the archetype in the realm of fan fiction. Mary Sue's were usually self-insertion stories by very young female writers. It is true that Paula Smith was criticizing the use of the Mary Sue archetype, but she was also sympathetic to what was driving it. In all the intervening years, I've thought about what the Mary Sue might mean psychologically. The conclusion I have come to is that she represents the teenage girl suddenly finding power. It is the power of her sexual attraction. There were a lot of Mary Sues written in the 1970s, and these were from writers who were born in the 1940s and 50s, not quite the time of women's liberation. And suddenly, when a girl becomes mature, people pay attention to her. So, psychologically, it's a stage of development in young girls. Believe it.
Yeah, so basically self-insert.
Right, but she's speaking specifically about her examples of reading those fans' works in the 70s.
Like I said, they're lonely housewives.
Yeah, but that's fine. But you know what? That's no longer applicable today because anyone can write fan fiction. Anyone could have a character who's overpowered and well-liked, etc., and they don't have to be women or men or monogendered or trigendered or whatever. They could be whatever they like.
That's why there's so many different flavors of Mary Sue. This was just one flavor. It's from the flavor of Mary Sue was a self-author insert author power fantasy of the lonely housewife.
Yeah, it's the same.
Now you can have a different Mary Sue who's coming from someone who just wants to do something else. Not just necessarily lonely
It's the
housewife.
same with the archetypes or the sub-archetypes of. Again, I love detective fiction. That's why I keep referencing it. But the armchair detective. We have Auguste Dupin. Then we have Nero Wolfe.
Mm-hmm.
Nero Wolfe is the armchair detective. He's an American insert or American creation. but he rivals Poirot. Poirot has one story where he literally does everything from an armchair just to show that he can do it. But there are better examples. So if you want to talk about specific instances, you have to update your lore. You can't just say, well, yeah, it's all Paula Smith. It's all Trekkie
it's
style.
true now.
So if
And
they're
all she
not
did
part of
was
the
study it.
if there's no like military academy, if there's no awards ceremony, if there's no like genius coming by and graduating at the top of her class, the youngest in her class, she's not a Mary Sue. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
Or not, Smith did not think that this archetype was bad. She simply thought it was a phase.
We have a super chat here, a $5 super chat. Andrew Clark. Let's see here. Death March to a Parallel World Rhapsody. The protagonist is a Mary Sue, as a plot point related to his past lives and destiny. It's a slice of life.
Yes, I've actually read that. I know what you're talking about, sir. It's one of those very strange Japanese harem isekais. Actually, no, they're all harem isekais, really. But this one is like it goes into detail. Like he becomes a merchant, and like he never takes advantage of any of the girls. There are some of the girls who are also been isekai'd, and he has like all the overpowered weapons in his magical box of what is it called, the sack that you can just put anything into.
Yeah.
D&D sort of a creation, and he just travels the land. All he wants to do is eat and meet new people. That's it. That's the whole story. So yeah, once you read one isekai, you've almost read them all. So I've said that before on our stream. So we could look at that example as an archetype and say, yeah, you know what? We shave off some of the things that are specific to a kind of genre, like you can jump between worlds, or things that are a little new or unique to that story because the author got bored. But it essentially all comes down to a video game RPG style environment where someone from one world goes into another for whatever purpose, whether they died, and that's a general term. And you could add to that, you could argue what is a real. I mean, I always have arguments with people what an RPG is. It has stats, you play a role, there's dialogue, there's this, all these other things with gaming, right? But you could minimize it, and we have minimized it. We have gotten to a level that I'm comfortable with saying is a definition which I think is universally accepted, or I can argue universally, as compared to this Velba definition, which doesn't even make sense. Like two of them they're already true, and the other three are just almost nonsensical. So
yeah, they're not necessary. Even the term sometimes is added in there.
Yeah, so I'd really argue for. So half of them are true. So all right.
Yeah, proof as how unnecessary some of these are.
Right.
Most writers go through. It's a character that they want to be, so they write it as a sort of wish fulfillment. But there are Mary Sue archetypes that are written well. So what is, according to Paula Smith, the right way to write a Mary Sue? 2 things, she says. First, you have to give the reader somewhere to fit in the character. And second...
Wait a second. Okay, so Paula Smith's telling you how to write a Mary Sue?
I guess so.
That's like saying how to write a piece of crap.
Because if they're a good character, then they're no longer a Mary Sue. If they're treated well, the plot treats them like people instead of gods.
This is where I'm very confused, because Paula Smith is either saying how to write a good character, or Wit and Folly doesn't understand it, and Paula Smith is saying, well, if you want to write a piece of shit, this is how you do it.
Which is useful knowledge to know. First, you have to give the reader somewhere to fit in the character. So like a pair of pants, which is kind of like what the character from the Twilight series is kind of. She is someone the reader can slip into, which doesn't make her a Mary Sue. It just makes her kind of a person you can insert yourself into, which is something as a technique used in a lot of different genres. Doesn't make them a Mary Sue. And second, you can warp any of the other characters.
Yeah, you can't. So this is pretty much...
It can't warp.
Yeah, this is pretty much a rule for people writing within a franchise. Like, say, Peter David is being asked to write a novella for Star Trek. Well, guess what? You can't kill off Worf. No crap, right? So you can't...
No one can do that.
Well, no, you couldn't if you wanted. So the whole point of writing within the franchise is you can't change things dramatically unless you have allowance to. It's the same thing with fan fiction. You can't just make Spock, sprout wings.
Yeah.
You can't just
Or
do
become overly emotional.
that. Right. I mean, you could try, but it's the same idea, right? You can't just break all the rules of lore. And that's all she's really saying in this paragraph. So she's not saying...
She's saying like how to write a good character then. How to write a good fan fiction character.
Yeah, pretty much. Not necessarily a Mary Sue, because we know what Mary Sue is.
Yeah.
It can't warp any of the other characters. You can't change the character.
Oh, thank you, EC Cons, or ECK Owns, if you liked lowercase owns. The Wizard of Oz, Narnia, and Dante's Divine Comedy is isekai. I could definitely say Wizard of Oz, sure.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was wondering, is Dante's Inferno a self-insert Mary Sue journey?
Yes, it is, because it's the...
I could kind of see that.
Yeah, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Yep, that's definitely a doorway to another world. Dante's Divine Comedy. That would probably be that could be the original.
And I mean, he even warped people in there too. Like he hates the, I think he hates the Greeks or something. Yeah, he hates the Greek Dante. He hates the Greeks because he's Italian, and he makes like all the Greek people, the ones he doesn't like anyway, really really bad and damned to hell. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to how you want to, because it's always putting someone into another world. But again, the classic example from the Japanese manga flavors are you're moved to a game world where you are overpowered because of some cheat, or you're actually the opposite thereof, and you're just a normal person, but because you have knowledge of this world, you can apply it. And honestly, it goes through cooking, it goes through all these other subgenres that don't involve harems or war or power or money. It's always just, there's so much subgenres of isekai, it's just crazy. So
Of known characters and make them unrecognizable. This is the wonderful balancing act of any writer. For any writing, you have to have plot, characterization, setting, theme, motif, all of that stuff. And
okay, so she is saying this is how to write a good character, not a Mary Sue.
exactly, yeah.
Because if your characters, if the established characters can't break character to all of a sudden just bend and love your Mary Sue character, then she's not really Mary Sue,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
she's being treated fairly by the plot at that point, and she's no longer Mary Sue.
All the definitions of Mary Sue have the character do something over the top, like being very good at war, being very good at sleeping around, being very good at something, right? And in this case, it's like, no, they're just a character. They have a plot. That's it. Nothing special.
So yeah, Paula Smith knows what the Mary Sue is. He says, okay, don't write it like this. Okay, don't write a piece of crap. Okay, don't bend the world to your character, because that's a Mary Sue. Write a good character, and here's how to do it. Write your character in there. You can have a whatever character you want.
Yeah.
So have them run through the plot and make sure the characters stay consistent. Make sure the lore stays consistent. Make sure everything is there.
Yeah, it's like, yep, you're right. I agree with Paula Smith. The problem is the YouTuber thinks that this is a Mary Sue. It's like, no,
it's not a Mary Sue. That's the opposite of a Mary Sue. That's a good character. It's a well-written character.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why she said this, but okay.
And you have to give it life. You have to create a character who is interesting, who is human.
Okay.
So don't make her Mary Sue is what Paula Smith's advice is.
Yeah, I would say Paula Smith is your average editor. She's nothing.
Yeah.
She doesn't have too much insight into writing, because as soon as I read this sentence, you have to create a character who is interesting. This is the most, again, interesting is the most generic term you could use to define anything. Okay? And so this is not really good advice. It's just average. It's like, okay, yeah, this is, don't write crap. Don't have your character, kill everyone off. This and that. It's like, yeah, okay. So, yeah, thanks, Paula. Great ideas, but not too helpful. Don't write crap. Gotcha.
With recognizable foibles, but who is intelligent enough and heartful enough to be a bit self-aware. It has to be a true hero or heroine that we, the reader, want to be with. For example, in 1976, Paula Block wrote a series where McCoy fell in love with a character named Sadie, but Paula Smith said that this did not change McCoy's characterization. When contemplating whether or not this character was a Mary Sue, Smith notes, "As a writer, she, Paula Block, gave a lot more than she demanded from the reader. She gave us a character that we could recognize to a certain degree, but did not demand that we fall in love with the character. We could like Sadie or not on our own terms. A story..."
Okay, why are we talking about this? I don't understand. Like, we're no longer talking about a Mary Sue. But okay.
Man's headspace, and the Mary Sue wants to come and occupy your whole head, so the writer gets the enjoyment and not the reader. It's a little too much like being used. The main point here that makes Mary Sue derogatory is that she acts as a black hole in the story. The story revolves around her, warping and changing all other characters to her needs.
Not necessarily. The plot could do that, but not necessarily the characters around her. The characters around her just like her a lot. And they say, "Oh, wow, you're amazing. How'd you get that way?" "I don't know. It's strange," which is pretty much what Ray is. So that's what ends up happening. And we've lost LiteratureDevil again. Oh my god. Oh boy. Well, luckily we've gone through all the criteria. We have a few minutes left. We're going to keep on going. So we'll see what Mr. or the YouTuber has to say.
In the context of the original Mary Sue, she is dropped into the presence of characters that already exist. We know Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. When they meet Mary Sue, they are no longer the Kirk, Spock, and McCoy that we once knew. Compare this to Rey. This is initially her story. When she meets characters that have existed in previous films, she does not change them in any way. They may be different than what we remember them to be, but it isn't because of her existence in the story.
Okay, this is a strange statement because a protagonist story or a main character in a story, it is their goal to grow and change. If we look at Joseph Campbell, it is the journey of the psyche. It is trying to discover one's faults and failings and weaknesses and to learn from them and to grow in 4 different ways. And that's all up to the writer to how to do that. It would help if they had versions of themselves to look at, like side characters or even the antagonist, to see where they're going and why they're changing. They don't need to change because they are side characters by definition. They're there to help or hinder the protagonist. So this whole spiel about, well, they have to change or they don't have to is like, okay, no, they don't have to do any of that because the focus of the story is the protagonist. Now, and of course, the Star Wars movies, you have all these moving parts, which is a problem with the epic scale, if you want to say, or the nature of it, because there's so many characters, at least in the prequels. They had at least 4 or 5 threads moving together, all interconnected, which makes it a bit confusing and doesn't focus on the development of the character. And especially when you have Anakin, who's a kid, and who is actually a Mary Sue, you have a lot of problems. So with the new series, the new trilogy, you have Rey, you have Finn, you have Poe, you have all these other characters, and then the antagonists. So there's lots of moving parts, and it can get lost. And you really have to focus that plot, because if you don't, you're going to get lost in side stories, as we saw in The Last Jedi. Canto Bight, a complete waste of time. It had no payoff. It had no plot relevance, meaning the subplot that it was never connected back to the main plot. Nothing treated it properly. It was a big waste of time, and all we got was a whole bunch of other stuff related to the themes of, what was it? A bunch of imprisoned kids working as slaves, a bunch of dog working at races, the affluence of the rich in a war economy, all sorts of nonsense that had nothing to do with the actual plot line of Rey. It was essentially a side story that did not go anywhere. Actually, all of the Last Jedi was a side story that went nowhere. They ended up exactly where they started, only with a lot less ships and a lot less people. So, pretty hard to explain why Rey is the way she is because she's not interacting with people. If she actually had some character development, then we could say, oh, okay, this is where she's headed, this is her fault, this is her failing, this is her goal. We don't have that. She doesn't know where she belongs. That is a rudderless ship. She doesn't know what to do. She thinks she does, but she doesn't have a goal that is clear. She thinks she can save Kylo. Nope, doesn't happen. So.
When we first meet Rey, we see her work, we see her eat, we see her struggle, fight, and mark the days on her wall to keep track of how long she's been waiting for someone.
So.
We see the dead flowers she picked on her table. We watch her pretend she's a resistance fighter. Mary Sue's...
No, she just puts a helmet on. I don't think she was aspiring to be a resistance fighter. If she was aspiring to be a resistance fighter, what the hell is she doing waiting on a planet? That's her plot. She's waiting for her family or her parents to pick her up. If she's dreaming to be a resistance pilot, it's just a fantasy. She's not... And plus, it's not even clear that that's what she's doing. All she's doing is putting a helmet on her head. That's all that scene in the Force Awakens is. That's it. To read into that is false.
Don't get that sort of treatment. They plop into a story demanding to be loved with minimal development, often lacking in that sort of intimacy that we...
Why does Mary Sue demand love? Why is this a criteria? When was this a criteria? It certainly wasn't a criteria in the list you gave us. That's for sure. Not sure where that happened. That's very strange. I mean, if you gave us a definition about everyone liking them, and then suddenly they have to be demanding of that liking, maybe, but you didn't say that. Having supernatural powers, is that maybe those powers cause them to like them? I don't know. That's, again, you're inventing new rules, which you can't do. I mean, what does relationships have to do with that? Being well liked does not mean I want a relationship. It's a very strange thing to say. So I don't know where that's coming from, but alas, we have these definitions that seem to get redefined. Oh, here we go. Yes, I know it's showing. Thank you, guys. Let's see. I think LiteratureDevil is back. I just have to get him reconnected here. Where are you, sir? Da-dee-da-dee-da. I see him back online. Well, we'll just keep going because I don't think we're going to get much more out of this, but we have 3 minutes left, so...
We watch her pretend she's a resistance fighter. Mary Sue's don't get that sort of treatment. They plop into a story demanding to be loved with minimal development, often lacking in that sort of intimacy that we...
Rey has minimal development. We don't know what she's growing into. We don't know her faults. And if she has faults, we're not aware of them. She doesn't need anyone to be challenged with those faults and failings. She certainly is the one that needs to go out and get help. And if she does, she never gets it. And if you could argue that Luke trained her, well, for 30 seconds maybe, that's something, it's true. But definitely not what she was expecting. Definitely not what we were expecting.
Get out of Rey's intro. At this point, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, Rey may not be a Mary Sue, but she...
No, she is. You haven't changed her mind. In fact, you've agreed half the time. And arguing that she's not young enough or that she wasn't given a cake is pretty stupid. Honestly, that is the dumb... I've never heard those two criteria before. And the sometimes is not a hard and fast rule. So you got to be clear on those rules when you make them. You can't just go around making up one based on relationships. So, LiteratureDevil's back. Yay! Let's see, sir. Are you back? Hello. Mr. LiteratureDevil, you're back. I see you on my screen. Can't quite tell if your mic is working yet. But we are almost 3 minutes done. And she invented a new term for Mary Sue without actually using the original, which is fun. I think, oh, someone's saying I'm a little off. Okay. Why am I off, chat? Tell me. I accept all my criticism. Go right ahead. She had to survive. I didn't see her do it. Rey deliberately proclaims herself someone no one knows in the trailer. Okay. The truth of Mary Sue is the complete opposite of what Wit and Folly is saying. No, LiteratureDevil is trying to connect. You see his icon, but he's having connectivity issues. Let me see if I can try a different region. Let's try south. Da-dee-da. Hello, sir. I know. Let's try good old Hong Kong. There we go. Hong Kong it is. Still connecting. Okay, tell you what. I'll talk, and you can type in the chat if you want. How's that? We can do it that way.
We watch her pretend she's a resistance fighter. Mary Sues don't get that sort of treatment. They plop into a story demanding to be loved with minimal development, often lacking in that sort of intimacy that we get out of Rey's intro. At this point, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, Rey may not be a Mary Sue, but she shouldn't have been able to learn the Force that quickly, or she didn't get beat up as much as Luke or Anakin did in the past films, or she didn't truly fail and therefore didn't develop as a character. My answers to you are, says who? Why does that bother you?
Says me. We can go back to that definition one more time just to hear it.
Don't get that sort of treatment. They plop into a story demanding to be loved with minimal development.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are, sir. Hello. We are connected
Returned from
via
the dead yet
Singapore. Halfway around the world.
Well, Singapore apparently works.
Yes.
I don't know why, but it does.
Gotta love the Singaporeans.
Let's see if we can last long enough to finish this video.
Yeah, she's creating new criteria. Apparently, Mary Sue's demand relationships. Not sure where that came from. I'm not sure why she's adding to it too. It's just like, okay, she's got this.
It's more of a something that kind of happens with the Mary Sue. It's because it's an author's power fantasy. So of course they'd want to get in a relationship with someone they admire or love.
Yeah, because Finn is more into Rey than Rey is into Finn, and
Rey is not really into anybody.
No,
maybe at a stretch, BB-8. She the only person she really seems to like is BB-8. She kind of just cares about Han Solo because we care about Han Solo. But again, going back to when I just was taken offline because my computer keeps freezing for some reason, and maybe it's all the cringe of this video. I don't know. But if Rey was written like Paula Smith suggested she be written, she would not be a Mary Sue. We would not be making arguments that she were a Mary Sue because she wouldn't be one. Because Paula Smith said something along the lines of giving characters, making them interesting, giving them recognizable foils, which Rey doesn't have, and she's not interesting. So if the writers followed Paula Smith's advice for Rey, we would not be having this conversation.
Yeah, so it's a strange thing to proclaim these qualities like, oh, this is what a Mary Sue should be. Yeah, because you should not be writing the old way of writing a Mary Sue. It's crap. If
you're not writing a Mary Sue.
Yeah, you're writing an actual side character or a main character that happens to exist in this franchise. This is how you do it. Yes, of course. Thank you. Don't break anything while you're here. Here's the keys to the car. Fill up the gas when you get home, but don't crash it.
In that sort of intimacy that we get out of Rey's intro. At this point, I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, well, Rey may not be a Mary Sue.
Nope.
No, I'm not thinking that at all. I'm thinking she still is a Mary Sue, very much one.
And I think the criteria you gave us, the ones that you agreed upon were true, and we should give our definition, because I have my own, you have your own. Mm-hmm. It's very similar to the ones we've used before. They're overpowered. Their power or overpower is not explained in the story. They are liked by everyone. They have almost no personality, or a personality that's sort of like the everyman, like Luke had the everyman personality, just sort of generic. And they're always seen as good. The other one that I sort of contemplate with you is the wish fulfillment of the author, or the author insert or author on board moments, where it could happen, but it's really hard to tell sometimes because you have to get into the mind of the author, and I don't like using that intention, because I don't think that's...
Yeah, it's not absolutely necessary, but usually is...
It's clear. It's clear to me, yeah.
Sort of wish fulfillment.
Yeah, there's an agenda, there's a philosophy, etc. Yeah.
It could be the author's personal power fantasy, a political power fantasy. I mean, you can see this with a right or left. You could have a power fantasy of guy saving the world with guns and using the Second Amendment, or you can save the world with kindness and understanding for whatever reason. But to me, a Mary Sue is a character to which the plot bend to appease. So even at the expense of laws and logic and established lore, that things just sort of happen in favor of this character. They don't have to work for anything because the author just wants them to be awesome. So if, for example, if you have a fresh-faced young cadet, and he goes off to war for the first time, and he goes to fight a villain who has a long record of being competent, outsmarting his enemies, and fighting people to victory in hand-to-hand combat. And this guy this new cadet who has no real training or talent or anything like that he steps on the scene, steps on the stage, and suddenly this villain becomes incompetent and starts making stupid, silly mistakes that he has already been established as not usually doing. That's how you know you have a Mary Sue on your hands, because at that moment the villain is good against everyone else, but because the author wants their main character to be awesome, suddenly that villain becomes stupid in the presence of a Mary Sue of their character. So that's what I mean by when a plot, logic, laws kind of all bend to the will and the whims and the needs of the main character. That's how you know it's a Mary Sue. Although it's not just one particular solitary instance. To me, it has to be a pattern of these things happening.
Right. So the definition they gave, or she gave, about again, we're only using the four. The fifth one was stupid. The two we agreed with was everyone likes her.
Yeah, that's usually one.
And they're overpowered. Those are the two we agreed with.
Yeah, that's also usually one.
Yeah, so she agreed with... So the author herself is like, hey, you know what? There is some overlap, even though I disagree, but those two she agreed with. So the other two is that she has to be young, or the youngest in a group.
Not necessary, no.
Which is, I've never heard before. And the fourth one we also never heard before, which is the strangest one we've ever heard, is that they have to win extraordinary honors.
Extraordinary honors? No, I don't think so. That's not a necessary... That's not a need for that to happen, so that the character could be labeled as a Mary Sue.
And this is a criteria from a person understanding the story that Paula Smith put together as a parody. Okay?
It was a parody.
This is not the actual definition or the common usage of the term or the common criteria.
And then they just had a quote from Paula Smith disagreeing with the video maker here. Paula Smith said, okay, that's a Mary Sue. Here's what you want to do. You can't alter characters around you, your character. You can't alter the lore. You have to, everything, if you're writing in an established setting like Star Wars or Star Trek, everything has to remain consistent. They can't just break and bend because of your character, which is exactly what happens with Rey. That's exactly why, if it's my definition of Mary Sue, that everyone likes her because everyone just likes her. It kind of is the world of logic and laws and everything else is kind of bend so that everyone else can like her instantly without it needing to be earned.
Yeah, I would have.
And overpowered, of course, same criteria there.
I would have loved if Finn was like terrified of her, because she's just like, he is kind of scared of her at first, but then he's like terrified. Holy crap! How could you do all this stuff? Like, what's going on? This is weird. But no, he's like, wow, Rey's amazing. I gotta go to my friend Rey.
She's so awesome.
Yeah.
But she shouldn't have been able to learn the Force that quickly, or she didn't get beat up as much as Luke or Anakin did in the past films, or she didn't truly fail and therefore didn't develop as a character.
These are all true.
Yeah, those are all true. If she needs to fail, she didn't fail. The only time she really, really failed was when she got captured, and then, she gained 10 levels and gained all kinds of powers for some reason. So it wasn't really a failure there either.
She powers up, and we don't know how. It's strange. She's fighting.
And then she beats Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
nothing bad happens to her.
She's fighting Kylo in the snow. He says, "I can train you in the Force." She says, "The Force," and then she closes her eyes, and then it's like Altered Beast. She goes, "Power up," and she grows 3 feet.
Force? Oh yeah, I have that.
I have that thing. Yeah.
My answers to you are, says who? Why does that bother you? And yeah, she actually did.
Oh God.
Says who? Pretty much everyone. And why does that bother us? Because it's bad writing, and it makes her uninteresting. Yeah. And there's no hero's journey for us to follow.
I can compare this to a story that a 6-year-old would write for the first time, and it's like, I'm with my friend, and my friend and I are we can fly through the clouds, and we're having fun, and we love each other, and everything's great. The end. You're like, okay, that's cute, because it's a kid and they're having fun and they're writing a story and they're using their imagination.
Yeah.
But compare that 30 years later when the kid writes the same story and you're like, wait, don't you know books? Don't you know how stories have to progress and how there has to be a development and challenges? And you can't have perfect characters that are like Superman. You can't write a story about Superman. Superman saves the day at the end. It's like, there's more to a Superman comic than that. Or a good Superman comic, rather. I'm sure there are some bad ones.
Even Superman goes through trials and tribulations, doubts and challenges. Even though he has all this power, there's still things that can challenge him, morally and otherwise.
So with Rey, when she finds a challenge, she might lose the first time, but then she wins almost instantly the second time. With the gun,
without any real change. Like, she didn't go through like a point of development where she practices with lightsaber,
exactly,
or practices with the gun. She fails the first time and then tries again and instantly succeeds.
If it was force powers alone, we could say, okay, that's just her thing. But it's everything: firing a gun, piloting, shooting, hiding. Things that aren't related to the force, like practical things. She just does it. But because it's everything, because it's so, and maybe the force can explain all that crap, but there's too much crap to explain now, and there's no way. Like, this is what I always say to fans of a franchise. I saw it with Mass Effect. The sequel to a movie cannot correct the mistakes, or the sequel to a trilogy or whatever. The next installment of a chapter cannot solve the mistakes of the previous installment. It won't.
Yeah, it's too late.
There's too many. You have to have a lampshade of a lampshade of a lampshade for that specific problem, and then et cetera, et cetera. And then you have half a movie or half a story just correcting the mistakes of the previous one. So that's what you might get a bit of it. I admit, maybe JJ isn't completely blind and deaf, that he's like, hey, you know what? That Last Jedi, holy crap, that's, woo.
I guess I'll take him over Rian Johnson.
Sure, but it's like he has to build on top of that, which is like building on top of a broken house that's been burnt down and slammed by a Godzilla a few times. It's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, of course you can do this. You're getting paid millions and millions of bucks. You better be able to do it. I mean, I'd try my best.
I like how this part of the video, her argument was kind of like, well, even if Rey is a Mary Sue, so what?
Yeah.
Who cares? What she just said. Who cares if she's a Mary Sue? Why does it bother you?
What
it's a movie about space wizards.
Don't you like the fact she has a womb?
Yeah, she only has one. I think she'd be better if she had like 6 or 7.
6 or 7 wombs, yeah. That would be like that would be top tier symbolism there.
Failed to bring back Luke, and she failed to turn Ben.
Okay, yeah.
Her failures are other people's failures.
It's like, Luke, come with me. No, please, no. Okay, I'm going. Bye. Kylo, come with me. No, you come with me. No. That's what happened.
Her failures are that people won't listen to her, even though, because we know she's right and we know they're wrong. So they both end up
because she's always good. Yeah. That's right. So
those are her counts as her failures that other people failed. She's so awesome.
Yeah.
That her own failures can't be her own failures. Her failures are the only thing that we can determine as Rey's failures are the failures of other people.
Right. And whether or not she wanted to beat Luke over the head and drag him, or why Chewie didn't do anything, or why she couldn't just overpower Kylo. Well, I don't think she wanted to overpower Kylo. I think she obviously did that when the thing exploded. But did she really want to? She wanted, because she saw a vision thing that, oh, Kylo's going to change, but she has no control over that. It's not her fault. She saw a force vision. It's like, okay, this could happen. All right, it doesn't. Oh, well. Is that her failing for believing in a dream? Like, how do you gauge that? How do you say that's a fault? I don't know. We'd have to see the dream. What did the dream say? Was it a force dream? No, she just said, I saw it. He can change. It's like, all right. Say so. Oh, no, he doesn't. Okay, you're wrong. Wow, great development there, Story.
Those are surely Rey's greatest failures.
She had a vision, it didn't come true.
Yeah, that's so the Force. She's so awesome that the Force was wrong in her presence,
The
so
Force is
she could
not
be
good
right.
enough for Rey. There we go.
She learned more about the Force and about destiny in The Last Jedi.
She did?
When?
What did she learn? Aside from that, it's a force that is around everyone, and then she could break rocks with it. That's all she learned. Oh, and the Jedi are bad.
Yeah, she learned the Jedi are bad. Another spit in the face of the Star Wars fans.
Jedi are
So that
bad.
the Jedi are bad, so Rey could be good.
Yeah. Everyone's bad except for Rey. Kylo's the bad boy, so he's automatically bad. All right.
But really, what you think a character should go through is all incredibly subjective.
Wait a second. So what you think Rey went through is also incredibly subjective. So what kind of argument is this? Like, oh yeah, by the way, this is what really happened to Rey, but what you think is subjective. Thanks.
You're watching movies wrong.
You're watching. Yeah.
I
You know
know,
what?
almost
If
at this-
she gave us a definition of what a Mary Sue is, and it was like, yep, it checks off all the boxes of why Rey is not a Mary Sue, then we say, okay, but because okay, this is a stupid criteria anyway, but because one of them was wrong, two of them I've never even heard of, I don't even know how they apply, and the other two she actually agreed with. That's not a very
Yeah.
good sign of an argument. You have to, like, it has to be across the
the
board.
major ones, the more meaty of those points that really determine her as a Mary Sue, those actually apply to Rey. But the the ones where she has to be
Yeah.
16 years old and really receive medals,
Yeah,
those didn't.
again, as I said before, I have 7 or 8 steps to my criteria. All of them are true. In her 4 steps, half of them are true. Like,
Not a good
don't-
sign.
Like, I'm sorry, but my criteria is stronger than hers, and they're all true. So I don't like. Oh, but she's not young enough. Oh, what? Come on.
It doesn't matter. You can have any guy or girl be a Mary Sue, no matter what the age. A Mary Sue can be anyone. Like a hero can be anyone. A Mary Sue can be anyone.
Right.
At this point, I'm pretty sure that in the movie, Kylo knows she's a Mary Sue. That's why he wanted her to come over to him in The Last Jedi so they can beat Snoke together, because there's no way he could beat Snoke on his own, because he's not a Mary Sue, he's just a normal guy. But with a Rey in the room, he has every chance in the world.
It's just you're in the orbit of influence that Rey is part of.
You are in the orbit of a literal god.
Yeah, it's
You
like
cannot be defeated. You can do no
you're
wrong.
in the room. You're in the womb of Rey when she enters.
Womb.
Yeah, the psychosexual power. Again, that room is pure sexuality and blood.
It has
and
all these symbols. So
passion.
many symbols in that room.
So
They don't really
it's-
connect with each other or really have any logic for being there in the first place, but so many symbols.
Yeah, it's all metaphor, really. Snoke isn't really dead. He just couldn't possibly be in the same room as Rey was. So
He just fell apart.
he just fell. Yeah.
When people began to use the archetype Mary Sue to criticize all works and not just those
Okay, when did that happen? I don't remember using the term to criticize everything. That's stupid.
Yeah, just the characters who are Mary Sue's.
When I start using the term anti-hero to criticize everything, it's like, when did I ever do that? Come on.
contained in the fanfiction world, the term was forever altered. By the original definition of Mary Sue, canon characters cannot be a Mary Sue because they are not self-insertion, wish-fulfillment characters placed into an already...
That's a lie. There's a flavor of Mary Sue. Well, actually, according to the original definition, I guess you have to stick to the original definition, even though it's not the only definition of Mary Sue. But so a canon character cannot be a Mary Sue. They can. It's called a Canon Sue.
Yeah, there's actually a definition. I have it right here. It's literally called Canon Sue. She put it on the damn screen.
It's called Canon Sue.
And she said, no, this is not possible. Oh my God. Now, see, this is what gets me pissed off. When they start lying to you like this. Okay,
That's why she has to stick so rigidly with the original,
Yeah,
quote unquote original, even though it wasn't original.
do some
definition.
basic homework. Read the goddamn page. Tell me why it can't happen. Because this is literally the definition. A Canon Sue is a Mary Sue, Marty Stew, who happens to be a canonical character. This could be one of two
Wesley
things.
Crusher was one.
Yes. A possession Sue, it's more frequently referred to as Canon Sue, but it has its own article. a professional work in which a canonical character already has the attributes of a Mary Sue or Marty Stew. And there's all these examples. I said, what?
Possession Sue is when you have a fan fiction where there's not an original character, but the fan fiction writer has their favorite character. So they would, for example, take over Spock, or they would take over Captain Kirk, and they would write Captain Kirk how they want to write Captain Kirk. That's what we call possession Sue.
Right. Happens a lot in fantasy and science fiction. So again, I just don't like the fact that she's lying here.
Existing universe. The term Canon Sue didn't catch on because it in itself is flawed. There is apparently an entire community on LiveJournal that exists for the entire purpose of pointing out why certain characters are Canon Sues that include criteria such as annoying origin, annoying way of ruining the story, and annoying special abilities.
Okay.
What am I getting the feeling that she's trying to discredit the fact that Canon Sues can exist? Because if she has to acknowledge that Canon Sues can exist, then there's a possibility that Rey can be one.
That's a really weird way of attacking the term, saying it doesn't exist, and then pointing to a board where people dedicate entire
the whole community here.
Community of just talking about what a Canon Sue is. It's like, are you dumb?
These people are all watching movies wrong.
It's like what?
All watching movies wrong.
It's like, here's an entire website dedicated to the term I don't believe in. What is wrong with this person?
That all sounds incredibly subjective to me.
Okay, yes, they're interpreting the term, and they're giving examples why the term exists. So it's no longer subjective.
Canon Sues exist. Okay, that's where they came from. That's where Canon Sues came from, because people were noticing that there are canonical characters who exhibit these same patterns as these fan fiction in self-inserts.
Yes, like Possession Sue, as again, it happens quite a lot with, manga is crazy with it. Science fiction, you have one of the more classical archetypes in Carl Jung, the shadow self, doppelgangers. Science fiction, androids, all sorts of crazy cyberpunk stories. I mean, we're going to see a whole bunch more, especially next year with Cyberpunk 2077. Hacking into things, having characters possess bodies. I'm sure that's going to be a very common concept, the ghost in the shell, or the concept that you are just a bunch of data on a hard drive somewhere and you can upload yourself into something else. Cyber brains, all sorts of wonderful things. So, pretty common.
Furthermore, just compare Mary Sue to the competent man archetype, coined by science fiction writer Robert A. Heinlein.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, but say the same thing. Here we go.
The competent man is a polymath, skilled at many things, but the audience doesn't have a backstory as to why he is so skilled. He just is. Sherlock Holmes, Indiana Jones, and James Bond are all considered competent men. There are not many outright critiques of this type of stock character. Instead, people have adopted Heinlein's competent hero into an aspiring male figure.
Okay, I'm all for Heinlein, but he's bringing a generic term. I don't know where he got or she got Sherlock Holmes from. And the explanation of Sherlock is not some super genius. It's a guy who they've explained him as well as his brother's backstory, who have a very good insight into connecting the dots. In fact, his brother's even better at it. Just that Sherlock has been skilled specifically in one particular region of knowledge, which is forensics and people.
Yep.
Whereas his
Mycroft
brother
is way better. Yeah,
he's
way better.
He's
Mycroft
way
is better.
Smarter, right? But he just thinks
this is a lot lazier.
Well, yeah, he does things on a much broader level. So they explain where this comes from, aside from being super intelligent, which is like, well, you're born that way, fine. But it's not some supernatural power. It's just that they have so much experience. The term that I think it's called abductive logic, where they both do, or he does inductive and deductive reasoning, whereas he can say, you know what, there's a great possibility that this person is one of 5 things. And the whole story of Sherlock's of investigations is his to eliminate those 5 possibilities and figure out which one it is, because he's seen it all before. He's done it all before. He knows all these things. That's all Sherlock is. So he's the experienced guy who just happens to be specific to be only a detective. That's all he does. He happens
They even go into detail on how bad he is at everything else. In fact, Sherlock Holmes in the original A Study in Scarlet, I believe the first Sherlock Holmes novel, was introduced not by his virtues, but introduced by his flaws. It was Watson had just come home from a war, and he was looking for his friend, I believe his name's Dan. I forget what his friend's name was, but he was saying, "Hey, you're looking for a place to stay? I got one for you." And he introduced him to Sherlock Holmes, and Sherlock Holmes is looking for a flatmate because no one else wants to stay with him because he is most people find him insufferable. He was introduced that way.
Yeah.
He was introduced. Then we got to see how scientifically minded he is. But he's also, when we're introduced to his virtue of being scientifically minded, it's also he's a ball of energy and very, very strange.
He's eccentric. He plays the violin at different hours. He's a cocaine addict. He's highly unsociable. Actually, no, he's actually very sociable, but only when it needs to be. Like, he doesn't go out and seek it. Like, he doesn't have friends. He doesn't have a social circle. He hangs out.
People have to come to him.
Yeah, he hangs out with riffraff. He has the irregulars, little kids that he pays to be his eyes and ears. He has some boxing skills, so he hangs out with some boxers. It's very, very eccentric. And
Even he's so odd that that the whole thing was that he would forget common knowledge and only remember stuff he needs to do his detective job, because that's all he is. He's really good at being a detective, but not so good at being everything else.
yeah, I'd say so. I mean, he doesn't cook for himself. He can, but he has what's her name do it for? 'Cause it's her
Miss Hudson.
Yeah, I know. I think sometimes because the perspective is from Watson's side most of the time, he's almost as if he's like a side character, and Watson's the main.
Yeah.
It's sometimes like that, even though you really want to know what's going on with Sherlock, and of course Watson mostly talks to Sherlock and about him. So
It so happens that Watson likes Sherlock, and a lot of other people don't really. They respect him, but a lot of people don't really like him that much. This respect his reputation.
yeah. So I really want to know exactly what example that Heinlein is referring to, because I'm quite sure she just referenced those.
Because I would like to see some examples, because I'm going to go ahead and bet that these competent men have all these skills, but also have flaws to balance them out with.
Right.
So I just need some examples.
Yeah, I could talk about all the detectives because I know that most of the big ones, they have huge flaws. Okay.
Yeah.
One of them is
Most of them do.
One of them, the most obvious one, is having a superiority complex. They think they're head and shoulders above everyone else, and in most cases within their line of work, they are, because they're the best at what they do. Nero Wolfe is, I mean, all he cares about is his flowers and his restaurant. That's just about it. Everything else is just a hobby to him. He's rich, he's fat, he sits in his chair, that's it. And with Poirot, it's like, my God, everything has to be done a certain way or he loses his mind. It's like his bank account balance, his tie, his hair, his mustache, of course, the way his
Got it. Can't forget the mustache.
yeah, it's notorious for grooming. Like he's just like extremely exact with everything. Like if be around it would drive you crazy. Everything would have to be done his way, etc. So there's all sorts of idiosyncrasies with these characters, but that's what makes them interesting. They have these weird traits. You want to read about them.
They're respected for the good stuff that they do, that their talents and everything, but they also are interesting because of all the flaws and weird things that they do.
And that's what you need out of any character you write. And that's one of the things that Mary Sue's don't have, is a flaw.
Exactly.
In mainstream media, the term Mary Sue has been now accepted as too perfect or good to be true. So what does that mean?
It's not accurate, but it's pretty close.
Yeah. It's close. Yeah, it's not accurate. It can be too perfect. It's pretty vague, and too good to be true. It's also pretty vague. But if you're talking about just your standard Mary Sue, it could be applicable to them,
Yeah,
but it's not
yeah, if
specific
you're
enough.
just saying it in passing, what's a Mary Sue? It's like someone who just does great at everything and has no problems, and
Yeah.
yeah, pretty simple.
For those using it, and what does it mean for our female heroines and their critics? Ray is incredibly strong, smart, and all around competent.
Yes, but that's putting it lightly. That's like, how do you compare a god to a Jedi master? I mean, she gets her ass
You
handed to her
can you,
by
I mean,
Snoke.
you can have someone very competent and smart and all that stuff, and they can be a Mary Sue, but they can also be competent and smart and not be a Mary Sue because they have flaws. They go through trials and tribulations. It depends on how they're treated by the plot,
Yeah,
kind of.
like look at imagine we apply Heinlein's definition to Poe, right? Poe is an ace pilot. We don't know how he got
Mhm.
that way. We assume he's had all this experience. He's a captain, so that implies rank. You don't just become a
Yeah.
captain because someone gives you the title. You earn it. It's a military rank. So she's obviously fought wars. Same
Mhm.
with Holdo. She's a general. Oh, the general who did this? That's the Holdo? Like, okay, yeah. But we never cared about Holdo's rank. It was never a problem. It's like, yeah, okay, why is she dressed like a civilian though? That's weird. We
Why does she
had
have purple hair?
Yeah, that's the problem. We had like all these little details that don't make sense. The problem with Ray is her details, they're so generic. It's like she's good with a stick. Okay. Why? How is she good with this? Like, did someone train her with the stick? Oh, it's just a stick. Okay, maybe that's it. It's just a stick. She was,
I mean, 'cause, I mean,
abandoned.
I'm pretty sure some of these competent men, right? Some of these competent men characters, they are established already, so they might have a job as a doctor, like Doctor House, or a detective, like Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
So when we are introduced to characters like these, so okay, this is Sherlock Holmes. He's a consultant detective. Okay, so that's establishment to us as the audience. Ray has none of those things. She has no criteria, no papers, no titles or anything. She's just there. So when we have someone a character who's like Doctor House, we can kind of infer from his title of doctor that he's gone through med school, he's been through all sorts of training,
Right.
and has all sorts of experience. Ray
Yeah,
doesn't have any of that.
let's compare that to Finn. Finn is technically a stormtrooper, but he's also a janitor. So we don't know
Yeah.
exactly what his level of competence is with fighting, but he obviously passed the bar to be sent on missions. The problem was he didn't fire the shots to kill people for whatever reason. We don't care about why he did it or didn't do it. But he has training, so he is a soldier. Whether he's a
And we
good
don't.
soldier is up in the air, but he has some training. So when he starts fighting, it's like, okay, we can believe he knows what he's doing. Now the problem
Yeah.
is when he holds a lightsaber, it's like, this is a weapon, and then Maz is like, you already have a weapon. Like, oh, okay. And he's like, all right, I guess I could use this. So he's not completely daft to fighting with a melee weapon or whatever, but still, you're like, oh, is this guy going to be any good? Maybe not. I don't think so. And he does do a little bit of
So
fighting.
when he fights, we have to ask ourselves, how was he a stormtrooper? You kind of forget it because he's not really good at much of anything.
Right.
And this is a guy who has been trained since he was a kid, according to the lore.
Yeah.
And on another note, on the other hand, we have Captain Phasma. We don't question her rank or anything like that either. She's a stormtrooper. She's dressed in the uniform. We can logically assume that she went through training and earned that title, just like Poe did.
Right.
That's
Apparently,
why her rank is not a problem.
in the comics, she's a bounty hunter or whatever, and then she gets picked up by the First Order, and she's so good at it, she becomes a captain. And the whole issue with her backstory was that she didn't have any allegiance, even though she was really loyal. But as
Hmm.
soon as something happens to her where she's going to die, she gets out of there. But that's never really shown. We never get an example of that in the movies, and it was just a waste. Like, that's one of those wasted moments, which is pretty much the movie of The Last Jedi, where all these setups just get tossed. And why did Ryan Johnson do that? We don't know. And why did Ryan Johnson not treat Rey as a character with respect and give her the faults and failings to grow and learn from? And make that at least clear to us, because I'm sure she had some problems with Luke. I mean, she was like, "Well, why is this guy listening to me? I don't know. Why don't you go talk to him? Like there was no like internal monologue discussion to the audience saying, what's going on, Ray? Are you just standing around outside waiting? Go bug him. Go bug him till your fingers bleed. Like just knock on that door. You know, do whatever.
On that note, I mean, if you were going to argue that Ray's a Mary Sue, it's a very bad argument when you bring in Luke, because Luke is the older, wiser guy. So Ray is going over there to convince him because she's trying to convince him to go along with her because of what she thinks is right. In the normal circumstances, would the older, wiser guy be in the correct? And in order for the younger, more naive hero, which is Ray in this scenario, so they can be taught some sort of lesson or gain some sort of wisdom. In this scenario, Ray is totally in the right, and Luke is portrayed as in the wrong. So when Ray leaves, Yoda even comes out and says, "Hey, Luke, you're wrong. You should have listened to Ray."
Yeah.
It bends. This wise old Jedi galactic hero is wrong because Ray is nearby.
Which is kind of funny.
He's wrong in the presence of Ray.
Even though Luke's disposition has magically changed from, brave hero to curmudgeon-y sort of guy who doesn't care, the message from Yoda from the previous movie was like, don't go. You have to finish your training. With Luke, he's like, you want me to do what? With a laser sword? Are you kidding me? Like, it just, the whole response is still the same. Don't go. I'm not going. So Ray's like, no, we have to go. So it's like, did Luke learn anything? Does he care? Why does he not care? Why is he wrong? Oh, Yoda's back. How did that happen? Does he come back often, every Sunday? What's going on? Like, all these questions start popping up that Rian Johnson didn't care to answer or didn't care to think about, as well as destroying the lore of Yoda and the Force and Lightspeed and whatever.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah, pretty much everything in the movie is just a big pile of what the hell is going on. So, and Rey is one of those elements, a very big element. And to say that she's competent is like doesn't even cover. Like, if it wasn't for Rey doing everything, this movie wouldn't go anywhere. Like, what would happen? The Finn and Rose did nothing. Poe is at least destroyed the Dreadnought, the first one. And,
yeah, because Poe is awesome.
Yeah, and after that, it's pretty much all Rey.
Poe is hyper competent, but at least we can infer how he got his training and how good his skills are.
The only reason Holdo did anything is because they had to break the lore. So, all right.
Yeah.
Break some more rules, make some more bad writing choices. All right, let's do it.
On top of that, she has background for why she knows what she knows.
No, she doesn't. Where is she getting?
She has background. What background? She just knows things. Who taught her how to scavenge? Who taught her what parts are valuable? Who taught her how to survive in a desert world? Who taught her about the Jedi? Who taught her these things? Was it her parents? I don't know. How long have they been missing? Since she was a girl? That's what it looks like. So who taught her these things?
Why she is as strong as she is.
Why? Tell us why.
And why she is especially strong in the Force.
Why? Tell us.
How?
Why can't
when were we explained to this?
Yeah, she's just saying words now.
She has a background. She just said she has a background as explaining why she's strong in the Force as she is. What element of her background told us that?
Yeah, it's a very odd thing to say. She's just making stuff up. Unless, again, it's the only thing I've got. The only thing I possibly think of is Snoke's offhand comment that, the darkness rises for light to meet. It's like, okay.
So fan theory.
It's this bizarre statement that has, again, eludes even George Lucas's definition of what the balance is.
Women adopt her as an aspiring female figure.
Wait, what?
Who? What? When was that? Shouldn't you rather adopt a actual character as an aspiring female character?
Okay, we don't care if she's a woman. We care the fact that she's overpowered, an unexplained power level. That's the problem.
That's why what I always wanted to say is that all you had to do was make her like a Padawan waiting for her Jedi Master to return. Then a lot of these things would be smoothed over and fixed.
That would be interesting. So she's like meditating and chilling out and doing whatever training she was taught, limited training she was given. And
yeah,
I'm waiting for my master. I'm waiting for my master.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my master. So that instead of having, it would be replace that Dr. House thing or the Detective Sherlock Holmes thing. So now we have a Padawan Rey who is waiting for a master return. So we can see, okay, she probably had some training in the Force. She probably has some training in combat. She probably has survival skills because the Jedi are like a walking accumulation of knowledge in accordance to everything. They kind of they know a little bit about everything on every subject. So if we were introduced to Rey in that manner, where she's a Padawan that's surviving on that planet alone, waiting for a Jedi Master to return, then we would have logical connections with all of these answers for all these questions. We don't have anything. They didn't give us anything. She's just there and awesome for no reason, no explainable reason whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't. I really think what happened here, and it happens with a lot of people, is they have a conclusion. Rey is not a Mary Sue, and they work backwards to try and figure that out, try to find evidence. And what we got was a redefinition of a Trekkie's Tale by some other editor or whomever, saying.
I thought the Trekkie's Tale was some sort of like manifesto of some sort.
Apparently, it was like the only thing. Once that was written, that's it. There's no other thing that's written about Mary Sue's or poorly written protagonists or side characters. Nope, nothing else. Just Trekkie's Tale. Everything else is good. No, everything else is bad. Sorry. Okay. I don't know. Oh, that's it.
Thanks so much for
That's
watching.
Wow. Okay. Well, nothing new here, guys, except for some really dumb definitions that I've never heard before.
So 2 of the steps were pretty much empty, unnecessary. The 2 steps that had more meat to them, we agreed upon.
Yeah. So, and sometimes, guys, whenever you make a criteria or have an argument, try not to be having if in your statement. If this happens, like don't be Schrodinger's cat saying, it could happen, or both.
Could happen.
Like don't do that. Okay. It is either true or false. Pick one. Okay.
So even they acknowledge that the Mary Sue dying at the end, tragically or heroically or any capacity, is not necessarily a criteria of a Mary Sue.
Exactly.
It is sometimes it just can happen.
And this is not her definition. She has no insight in what it means to be a Mary or not to be a Mary Sue, apparently, because she's not raised on a Mary Sue. So, and there's so many terms out there you have to pick up on to figure out what is going on in the stuff you're reading or watching. Say, hey, wait a second, this author is missing things. He's jumping ahead. He's giving her gifts and powers that they shouldn't have. Why is that? Oh, they have an agenda. Oh, they have a self-insert moment, or they have a soapbox they want to stand on. You have to look out for those things. It happens in amateur writing a lot, not so much in professional. So I'm really impressed that, well, I don't know who the editors or quality control guys are at Lucasfilm, but
Probably nobody.
Apparently, Ryan Johnson can do no wrong. So
Hey, Ryan Johnson is a Mary Sue.
he's the golden child. Yeah. Everything Ryan touches turns to gold. Even when you have over 200,000 fans on Rotten Tomatoes telling you, nope, this is crap.
Hey, all those 200,000 fans, they're just watching movies wrong. They don't understand. They don't understand the hidden genius behind The Last Jedi.
Yeah, ever notice how all the people who don't see the same faults that we do all just sort of agree in general?
Yeah,
Yep.
like, I don't know why I disliked it. I just disliked it. Like everyone I know who like Marvel movies, who even like The Force Awakens, hates The Last Jedi.
It's a strange thing. I mean, there are elements of The Last Jedi which are attractive, which are fun, which are silly. But once you watch it for the third and fourth time, like, oh God, the faults just keep hitting you. And all those good signs are like, oh, that's what I'm getting out of this? One little joke, one little scene of almost crushing a fish nun. That's it. A little bit of slapstick. Everything else is crap, really? Okay, well, I think we've exhausted ourselves on this channel. Is there anything else from her that is worthy of taking apart?
I don't know. I didn't look at the other ones.
Yeah.
These two.
Her fans are not very congenial either. Not that I'm concerned with arguing on Twitter. My goodness, it's not a problem with those people. But
That's usually a bad sign. Usually, that's why you don't really see that many weird people on YouTube. They prefer the arena of Twitter.
yeah, and inviting them on to debate or communicate in private is never going to happen. I've always offered up to the people that we talk to, come on the chat, come on the channel. We'd be happy to have you. One exception, of course, when they're actually attacking someone like LiteratureDevil or myself, we won't do that because that's just in bad faith. So when it comes to the actual topic, well, no problem. We are very congenial. We're not going to start bashing you, calling you a moron. But when you don't show up, it's like, okay, well, we can only guess you've got your facts wrong. You weren't paying attention. You're biased. You're lying. I know she was lying at least twice in here. So, it's like, okay, this is like, I would just say, hey, what you just said there, that's wrong. Or maybe you didn't know that and, you're just unaware of the knowledge or the information. And we can correct those mistakes. You see? That would be great.
I'd probably give this video like what, maybe 3 wombs out of 10.
Oh, I don't know.
It wasn't that great.
I think our understanding of non-feminist female interpretation of Rey is a little lacking. I don't think I have the skills to properly quantify the womb index. If you have 6 wombs in The Last Jedi, you've already surpassed my expectations of what I wanted to hear.
That's how you know it's a good movie. The more wombs you have in a movie, the better the movie.
I would love for Miss Folly to, I don't know, took any movie and just tell me, are there any vaginas that symbolically represent doors or vice versa? Is there some sort of other genital association you have to do here? Like, what does that mean? Like, what's going on here? I'd really like to hear that because they can't just be all feminine. It has to be like some masculine movies out there where it's like, all right, these are the testes, right? You could tell these is a good pair of balls, just right there. She must have that sensitivity if she can pick out 6 wombs and birth canals.
Not just 1, but 6.
Yeah, that takes some sensitive understandings there that I don't possess. So, pretty cool stuff, guys. Thanks for listening. If you have any other videos, any other interesting topics of discussion, I know people have been asking me in the Discord to bring LiteratureDevil on for some literary terms that are a little hard to talk about or are very rare. I don't mind doing it. The problem is it's very specific, and I don't think a lot of people are going to like it. And we can do a video together, a collab about those terms if we have the time. But it's like the hardcore literature guys in my Discord are like, oh, I wish you guys would talk about this. It's like, whoa, I've never even heard of half of those terms.
Which term is it?
I have to go back, but I have very zealous critics or literary guys on my Discord, which I always appreciate because they correct me before I make a video, which is good. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening. If you want to click on some cool stuff in the description, there's LiteratureDevil's Indiegogo campaign. I think he's past 50%. That's awesome.
50% as of yesterday.
Wow. So
we're doing pretty good.
That sounds great. I'm glad everything's working out. If you want to check it out, it's a comic book story. It's the artist is pretty good, not too shabby art, and it's a story about villains, I believe, right?
And the main character is a villain, Dr. Alpha.
Interesting. I always like villains more than the heroes sometimes. Can't use that word sometimes anymore. Ooh, yeah, I don't use that.
Sometimes.
Sometimes I like villains and sometimes I don't. Okay. Have yourself a great night, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.